Chapter 121, Spiritual Realm. The two clasped their fists together and bowed in the old way. "I was just passing by and lent a hand," Mr. Lion said, turning his head. "What are your names?" "I'm Hong." "I'm Lei Shen." Both had felt the oppressive force that had rolled off Mr. Lion moments before. Yet now they showed neither timidity nor arrogance. These were Hong and Lei Shen, the future strongest men on Earth, and later among the few true gods and lawmasters in the universe. As ordinary Earthborn, their physical gifts were low by cosmic standards, but their spiritual realms were so profound, even true gods would acknowledge their inferiority. Mr. Lion recognized that, and found himself eager to learn from them. "Big brother, are you Chinese?" Lei Shen asked in Chinese, eyes bright with curiosity, like a brown bear watching a bird. "Chinese? Of course I am, just not from this China, from another one." Mr. Lion's answer cut off oddly, and he froze. His words had been automatically censored. The source will would never allow mention of worlds outside this one, granting him far more leeway than most. True gods who tried would be thunderstruck by the source will's warning. Two silencings in a row left Hong and Lei Shen utterly puzzled. Mr. Lion thought fast and lied instead. "I was a wild man from the mountains, never left them as a child. After the virus outbreak, I awakened a talent and found an ancient inheritance, so I secluded myself for a few years. Now I've come back out. My strength's decent, so I've been dealing with monsters along the way." Lei Shen's eyes lit up. "Big brother is awesome. What's your family name, big brother?" "Liang." "Brother Liang," Lei Shen clapped. "Brother Ang, your coming out of seclusion has saved all humanity." A smile brightened Hong's stern face. "Mr. Liang, thank you for everything. Why don't we?" "What are you saying?" Lei Shen kicked Hong. "Why, Mr. Liang, he saved us. Call him brother." Hong hesitated at Lei Shen's constant winking, then switched. Brother Ang, why don't you come have some tea with us first?" The two were the picture of simplicity and total goodwill. Even though they looked 10 or 20 years older than Mr. Lion, calling him Brother Ang felt natural. Together, they were like cartoon characters sprung to life. Mr. Lion couldn't help laughing. "All right, lead the way. I happen to want to borrow a few things." "Borrow what?" "Ask and you shall have it, Brother Ang. I'd even fetch the head of that giant octopus in the sea for you." Lei Shen boasted, name-checking a king-class sea monster he couldn't actually fight yet. "I'd like to borrow the secret manuals and ancient texts you've collected," Mr. Lion said. Earth had not yet recovered from the cataclysm. Factions still hoarded their techniques. Lei Shen only paused a beat, then patted his chest. "No problem. My books and the manuals I created, you can read them all freely, Brother Ang." Hong nodded as well. The others exchanged glances and pretended not to hear. Mr. Lion smiled. "Then lead the way." Time passed quickly. When Mr. Lion said he wanted to borrow, he meant it. On the first day, he went through every scrap of Lei Shen's and Hong's collections. He studied their exertion methods and even helped them innovate. In the Starry Sky world, there were two special combat principles: exertion and amplitude. Exertion is the technique for extracting more power from a unit of force, the upper limit being 100-fold. Amplitude is the technique that multiplies the body's overall output, also up to 100-fold. Combined, they could reach 10,000-fold effectiveness. 100-fold exertion was practically a prerequisite for immortals. 10,000-fold exertion amplitude was the benchmark for most lawmasters. Lei Shen and Hong were prodigies. Without an inheritance to guide them, they had devised 2-fold and 3-fold exertion techniques respectively within 3 years of beginning transcendence. Lei Shen with a saber exertion, Hong with a spear exertion, and shared their painstaking manuals with Mr. Lion. He absorbed their work in a minute, and 10 minutes later had deduced their methods up to 15-fold exertion. His higher realm insight let him advance rapidly in technique development, but he didn't push further. Hong and Lei Shen's methods had taken a wrong turn from the start. In the Starry Sky world, exertion amplitude must be comprehensive. Strength, speed, and defense all scaled together. Hong and Lei Shen's methods only amplified attack power. Instead, Mr. Lion turned to movement techniques, micro-level, precise, artistically conceived. His footwork and control improved rapidly. His command over his own power became ever more refined. Then he began reading ancient texts, Analects, Tao Te Ching, Spring and Autumn Annals. Classics that in other worlds were mere literature, but here seemed to wash his soul clean. He realized even his spirit had been altered by the source will. Earthlings in this world had unusually high spiritual potential because their planet had once been transformed by a great being of universe god level. As he recited the classics, his mind felt like a stubborn stone struck by steady droplets, each drop clearing impurities until the stone shone like jade. He read for 3 full days. When he came out again, Hong exclaimed, "Returning to simplicity, completely understanding your true nature." "Brother Ang, you reached the first level of the state of mind in 3 days," Lei Shen added. Mr. Lion smiled. "There aren't fixed levels. When it comes to the state of mind, what matters is what aligns with your inner self. The only difference is how far along each of us has walked our path." Hong froze at that, and after a moment, stood rooted in thought. Lei Shen's eyes brightened. "Brother Ang, teach me too. Help me comprehend. Get lost. Just be yourself. That's the right path." Mr. Lion gave him a playful kick. To everyone's surprise, Lei Shen was struck dumb and actually entered a state of comprehension on the spot. "What the? This works?" Mr. Lion was at a loss. He had meant only to speak plainly in a way that fit their temperaments. He had never seen an epiphany happen before his eyes. A few hours later, Hong and Lei Shen both came out of their meditative states almost at the same time. One exuded an aura of vastness and all-embracing tolerance. The other had become simpler and more straightforward, like a rough but pure man. They had reached higher tiers of state of mind, Lei Shen into the 3rd stage's all-embracing tolerance, Hong into the 2nd stage's pure innocence. Thump! Hong knelt on one knee at once. "Brother Ang, first the exertion techniques, then the enlightenment of the state of mind. I'll never forget your kindness." Lei Shen's eyes bulged. He pushed Hong aside and then dropped to his knees, prostrating himself. "Master, I thank you for your teachings." Hong was stunned for 3 seconds, then prostrated as well. "Please accept me as your disciple, Master Ang." Mr. Lion scowled. "What are you doing? I only said a few words. Both of you, get up." Lei Shen, suddenly very serious, didn't budge. "Master, I mean it. I want to be your disciple, not just because of gratitude, but because I want to become stronger following you." Hong's expression matched his. "Me too. If Master leaves monsters for us to train on, I must grow stronger to protect humanity." Mr. Lion hesitated. In the Starry Sky world, longevity made master-disciple ties closer than family. Hong and Lei Shen's talents were undeniable. Even with Earth's comparatively weak 9th-grade bloodline, the slow cultivation and difficulty with grasping laws, they would become great existences. If they ever found suitable bodies for transmigration again, Mr. Lion could not begin to imagine how powerful they would become. Lion finally agreed to take Lei Shen and the other as his disciples, though he could only stay 3 more months. Cultivators in the Starry Sky world don't have only one teacher. After he left, Hong and Lei Shen could still venture into the universe to seek stronger masters. Lion only needed to give them the right direction. What he could teach now was the experience of advancing in cultivation and his understanding of the Starry Sky world. After the two of them offered tea and bowed, formally becoming his disciples according to ancient Huaxia customs, Leon began explaining how to break through to the planetary level, domains, laws, and amplification of power. With their path clear, Lei Shen and Hong immediately retreated to closed-door cultivation to force the breakthrough. It would likely take at least 2 or 3 days. With only 3 months to spare, Leon couldn't remain to watch the whole process. He ordered their guards to keep vigilant, then left the base city. "There are many small ruins on Earth, mostly leftovers from the meteorite star. I'll sweep them first," he muttered. His gaze scanned the planet and picked out hundreds of ruins, large and small. "First, the ruins in South America. I can get a battlesuit and the psychic cultivation methods there." He didn't leave at once. Instead, he reached out to the source will. "Will boss, do you have any cultivation inheritance? Give me one." The source will, by now used to Lion's pestering over the past few days, replied tersely, "Insufficient time. Unable to exchange." It sounded concise, ever more like a main god. Lion switched to the Chan technique he had learned from Lei Shen and launched into a sales pitch. "Don't say that. Inheritances are just information. There's no loss in sharing. Besides, I want this inheritance not for myself, but for you." "For you?" The Source Will's tone showed a flicker of surprise. That's right. The more friends you have, the more paths open up. There were no paths in the world before, but with more friends, paths emerge. You're giving me an inheritance now. It would be you guiding my way forward and helping me become stronger. But in truth, you're not helping me. You're helping yourself. Helping myself? Of course, you've already helped me so much. We're friends. Why do I need this inheritance? It's so I can better help you. My friend is in danger. I truly wish I could become a true god right now to uncover the truth for you. Brother Will, from now on, I will be a path for you. The more you help me, the wider and easier this path will be. Lion didn't care whether the Source Will fully understood. Using metaphors and rhetorical flourishes, he sounded like a loyal old retainer desperate to serve. The Source Will went silent. Lion called, "Brother Will? Will Boss? Are you still there?" several times with no reply, then shrugged helplessly. Looks like the fourth attempt failed too. In fact, ever since he stepped foot on Earth, Lion had been trying to get a cultivation inheritance from the world consciousness. This was his fourth day and his fourth lobbying attempt, but the results were still disappointing. He made a mental note that when he returned to Marvel, he should change his university major to negotiation studies. He would need to master persuasion thoroughly. Next time he transmigrated into a world, he'd make every world consciousness dizzy with his lobbying. Let's go find the ruins in the Amazon, he decided, and flew toward South America. Half a day later, Lion, clad in a pitch-black suit and having perfected the basic techniques of a psychic, emerged from the ruins and stared up into the sky, thoughtful. Where boundless blue should have been, a blinding, sun-like brilliance now hung in the heavens. Crimson-white beams streamed down from beyond the starry sky, like colossal columns reaching to the surface. Hundreds of fighter jets were already leaving the atmosphere, heading toward that light. Lion activated his supervision and traced the beams to their source. It was a majestic fortress on the moon, a structure whose height spanned thousands of kilometers, its base embedded deep in the lunar crust, as if someone had hurled it down from space. The beams radiated from the top. Billions of cosmic energy rays, capable of annihilating space, hung and spun around the fortress as if it were a world center. Even starlight was warped there, forced to curve around the fortress's indestructible shell. The moon itself looked like a mirage. Lion hadn't read about such a fortress in the original works. He realized aloud, could this be the inheritance the Source Will mentioned? He hadn't expected the Source Will's silence to mean refusal. Perhaps it had been preparing something grand. Lion's biofield flared, and within seconds, he crossed the void between Earth and Moon. He hovered before the fortress, while many of the Earth jets that had departed earlier fell far behind. Some hadn't even completed a tenth of the journey. At that moment, the crimson-white light above the fortress washed over him, penetrating his entire body as if probing every cell. An ancient, solemn voice intoned, "Cosmic level, gene multiple 100x, brain domain with 100%, granting core inheritance assessment qualification." The light transformed into a bridge and pulled Lion up. He offered no resistance and was drawn into the top of the fortress. After a burst of blinding radiance, he opened his eyes into a space that resembled the universe's starry sky. All around him was a deep darkness punctuated by star-like points of light stretching beneath his feet, above his head, and to an unseen horizon. The interior of the fortress was far larger than its exterior suggested. Lion's supervision couldn't see its bounds, but the space extended at least 10 billion kilometers in diameter. He stepped forward cautiously. The points of light beneath his feet shot out lines and began connecting to other points. Those connections spread, and in moments the innumerable stars linked to form massive dot and line diagrams, like someone having photographed the Big Dipper and then traced it into a constellation map. "This is a secret pattern diagram," Lion breathed. He felt his mind drawn into it. Insights poured in as if the diagram was pouring knowledge into him. And it's a secret pattern diagram that fuses light and time. His heart hammered. The value of such a diagram rivaled the chaos scale of the human race from the starry sky world. Now it was openly displayed for him to comprehend. The Source Will had been generous. He nearly forgot that the voice had only granted him assessment qualification. You still know about secret pattern diagrams? Interesting, the same ancient voice said suddenly behind him. Lion's trance broke. He turned and saw a colossal phantom, a platinum-white, single-horned lizard-like apparition. It towered tens of thousands of meters tall. Each breath exhaled a mist the size of 1,000 jang. Its form instantly called to mind the starry sky beasts, or, at the very pinnacle of life in the original universe, the innate beast god. Chapter 1 Assessment. How many years has it been? I finally see a life form from the original universe again. The enormous phantom drifted toward Lion Stark. Its eyes, each as large as a skyscraper, were filled with a long, almost sorrowful sigh. How long has it been since I was buried in the original star? It must be close to 100 trillion epochs. 100 trillion epochs stunned Lion. That was almost an entire cycle. Are you a life form from the previous cycle? He asked. No, the phantom replied. I am only an intelligent program. In the middle to late period of the last cycle, the supreme time beast god Joe fell, and I and this fortress were left behind. After the original universe entered its cycle, the fortress was buried in the original star. Only now has it resurfaced. The phantom's gaze fixed on him. Little one, were you sent here by the source will? Are you the one with the potential to pass Joe's assessment and inherit his legacy? Lion nodded. I must warn you, the assessment risks your life, the phantom said. Whether I succeed or not, I have to try, Lion answered. A special life form with 100-fold gene multiplication. One could say you and Joe are of the same kind. You are qualified to try, the phantom exhaled. But your foundation is weak. Throw a punch. Let me see what you've learned. Lion took a stance and unleashed a punch using the flawed force exertion technique he had deduced to 15 times. The phantom's brows furrowed. Its voice rolled like thunder. What is this? Have you never had formal training? Not yet. I've been exploring on my own, Lion said. A blank slate, the phantom mused. Fine. I'll give you 30 days to master this secret manual and correctly reach 100-fold force exertion. If you can't, there's no point in proceeding with the rest of the inheritance. A translucent manual materialized and dropped at Lion's feet. The phantom then lumbered off on its 4 pillar-like legs, lay down at a distance, and closed its eyes. Lion picked up the manual, determination blazing. Time waits for no one. I'll learn the 100-fold technique quickly. The next day, Lion woke the phantom. What? You've mastered the 100-fold already? That fast. Throw another punch. Let me see. Lion struck again. The force was obvious. The phantom turned its head and coughed lightly. Not bad, it rumbled, but you're still far below what I was back then. Then the assessment begins, it said. You are favored by the source will, and Joe served the source will in his day, so I will not deliberately make things difficult for you. The assessment will test you in 3 aspects: law comprehension, mental state, and willpower. Law comprehension is the foundation for advancement. Mental state and willpower are essential for becoming an expert. Which would you like to be assessed on first? Mental state, Lion said. His mental state had just broken through. This was the time to consolidate it. Very well. Begin. A hazy light enveloped Leon, and he stood calm as trials followed trials. Half an hour later, the phantom suddenly spoke. You failed. You did not pass. Leave now. Before Lion could protest, a white light seized him and flung him out of the fortress. In an instant, the fortress was drawn into a black hole. The source will would not grant him another chance. Frustrated, Lion returned to Earth. He joined the meteorite starcraft to study secret techniques. 3 months later, he left a trove of manuals with Hong and Lei Shen and returned to the Marvel Universe, now at the peak of the World Lord level. He first bade the Ancient One farewell, then went home and shared the technology he'd gleaned from the Starry Sky world with Tony. Amid Tony's astonished exclamations, Lion plunged into the sun with one goal: become immortal in the shortest possible time. He stayed within the star for a year. Time should have flowed uneventfully, but everything changed the day Tony studied the Tesseract, and its fluctuations tore a rift through the world's portal. A purple-skinned titan in flowing armor stepped through, his gauntlet forged of Uru and bearing all 6 Infinity Stones. I am Thanos, he declared. I come to return you to the embrace of the goddess Death. Mortals, feel honored. Thanos prepared to clear the field with the gauntlet, but Lion returned from the sun almost immediately and intervened. For a moment, Lion, at the peak of World Lord power, sent Thanos flying from Earth. Thanos used the stones to teleport back and obliterated Lion's body instantly. This Thanos was from the comic universe. Amid the rain of blood, an unnoticed small spatial gate slipped in and sucked away Lion's original nucleus. Then, unstoppable, Thanos laid waste to Earth. Tony turned to ash, Natasha fell, and even the Ancient One was beheaded. 10 days later, Thanos left, having killed all life in that universe. 100 days after those events, Lion's original nucleus regenerated a new body in the sun. Before she died, the Ancient One had, at the crucial moment, used a teleportation portal to save Lion's core and send it to the star. It was the Ancient One's last act. "Thanos!" Lion roared. His powers flared to their World Lord peak, and his scarlet gaze made the starry sky tremble. "I will kill you!" He did not immediately hunt Thanos down. Instead, he dove back into the sun. 100,000 years later, Lion emerged, his body suffused with golden light. In his hands, he held a boundless inner universe he had formed, a pocket cosmos 100 billion light-years across. He swallowed the sun into it as if it were nothing. He had become an eternal god-level existence. Power capable of collapsing a universe pulsed with each movement. He tore through crystal walls between countless universes, activated his cross-world traversal, and traveled to the past of a neighboring world. There, on a mound of corpses on Earth, he found Thanos standing amid the bodies of Tony, Captain America, Thor, and the other Avengers. "Thanos!" Lion screamed, descending like a god. The winds, rains, and clouds parted for him. All creation bowed before his presence. He took a step, unleashed a 15th stage secret technique, and with effortless violence severed Thanos' head. Standing atop the mountain of corpses, blood and gore everywhere, he held the dripping head aloft and laughed like a madman. "Thanos, die! Die! Tony, do you see? I've avenged you!" His laughter echoed across the earth, but the triumph cooled quickly. "It's not enough," he muttered. "I still need to bring Tony back." Lion used the time stone to manipulate the world's authority and began to rewind time. The 4 abstract entities appeared to stop him. "You cannot revive him. It is an absolute fixed point in time," Eternity declared. "Without that fixed point, you would not exist now. Reviving him will destroy this world." Lion sneered. "Now you come out acting righteous? Where were you when Thanos came?" "You cannot stop this," one of the entities warned. "Do you think your defiance will go unpunished?" "Well, Tony must be revived," Lion said. "I say so. Even if you are avatars, if your true selves appeared, you wouldn't be able to stop me." A cataclysmic battle erupted. Every punch, kick, and blade strike poured forth as surges of supreme law. The clash lasted nearly a year. Its aftershocks shook the entire universe to the brink of collapse. In the end, Lion stood at the universe's edge, treading over piles of white bones, holding the dissipating remnants of eternity and infinity. He had prevailed at terrible cost. He used the time stone to rewind the past and successfully revived Tony. The instant Tony came back, the world began to collapse. "Where is this? I was dead." "Lion Stark, I'm glad you're alive," Tony cried, bewildered by the ruined surroundings. "But something is wrong. This place feels like it's falling apart." "It's nothing. Come with me. We'll go to another world," Lion said, ushering Tony into his inner universe and leaping away. They arrived at a new Earth, but before Lion could let Tony go, colossal shadows appeared outside the planet. Celestials, shorter ones hundreds of meters tall, the tallest towering hundreds of thousands of meters, loomed over the world. Their voices, majestic and deep, reached from the sky to the sea. "Outsider, Lion Stark," they thundered. Chapter 124. The heart is like a mirror. One can clearly understand one's true nature. "Outsider, you carry endless sins. Kneel now and accept our judgment," the tallest celestial thundered. "By yourselves?" Lion Stark sneered. His form abruptly expanded until it filled the void. Within moments, he was larger than 12 light-years, a presence as vast as a galaxy. Standing in the universe like a moving collapse, every gesture threatened to rend the cosmos. With one palm, he crushed the celestials. Laws surged and boundless energy washed over them, annihilating them completely. Yet as one quartet fell, another 4 abstract entities arrived on the battlefield. Lion Stark rose to meet them. Countless years passed. Lion Stark moved from world to world, erasing one pantheon after another that upheld cosmic order. He devoured entire universes. He faced off against all the so-called superheroes. He grew, battle after battle, stronger and stronger. But he was tired. At last he sat wearily on the earth of some universe, watching the stars dance across the sky. In the long struggle, he had broken through to God King, wielding power beyond the multiverse level, and the corpses behind him could fill an entire universe. Yet wherever he went, he was met by guardians of order. It felt as if the vast marvel had no place for him to exist. Suddenly, thunder rolled through space. Stars around Lion Stark detonated in sequence. Enough! A grand voice struck the universe like a hammer. Lion Stark looked up, solemn. The crystal wall of that world respectfully parted as if for a superior being. A figure taller than Lion descended, a colossal three-faced humanoid. He recognized it, the Life Tribunal, keeper of balance in the omnipotent universe. Lion Stark, you have committed enough wrongs and show no remorse, the tribunal intoned. Now, in the name of the omnipotent universe, I shall judge you. Brilliant golden light poured from the tribunal as the power of judgment sealed the entire universe. Even at his level, Lion Stark found himself bound, unable to move. Do you know your sins? The tribunal demanded. Lion Stark stared back. I only regret that I was not strong enough to defeat you, he said. The tribunal was unmoved. The judgment begins. The face of justice spoke first. You slaughtered the gods of the universe, disrupted the order of the multiverse, and committed unforgivable crimes. You should perish. The face of vengeance said, You began on the path of vengeance. You shall be ended by the vengeance of the universe. You should be imprisoned for billions of years. The face of necessity countered, Your crimes sprang from desperation. There was no place for you in your original universe. You resisted because you had to. The universe you shattered needs mending. You shall serve the multiverse eternally, maintaining its order. All three faces spoke in unison. We sentence you to be stripped of all your power, bound to repair the universe, and imprisoned in the multiverse for 100 years, until death. Lion Stark remained calm. He had long prepared for his own end. The slaughter had not fractured his mind. Instead, it left him asking the same questions every time he struck a blow. Where did this road lead? Did he regret resurrecting Tony? He had always failed to find an answer. His fate had seemed set the moment he began slaying across the multiverse. Do you have anything to say? The tribunal asked before pronouncing sentence. Lion Stark listened as the tribunal spoke again. Lion Stark, know this. Thanos did not come to your world because of a spatial stone fluctuation. He was drawn by the energy you released while cultivating among the stars. Now that you understand all the reasons, if given another chance, would you choose to become stronger? Would you choose revenge? The question struck at a place Lion had probed 1,000 times. Had he truly done wrong? Was seeking strength wrong? Was resurrecting Tony a mistake? He looked into the tribunal's stern faces and at last answered. There would be no cowardly retreat. If he bowed to fear, he would become weak, living at the mercy of others. From the moment he transmigrated into this world, he had been destined for more than ordinary life. Every disadvantage, every hardship had been the result of his own lack of strength. Though he had come close to ruin, his eyes now shone brighter than ever. I will not regret it. If given another chance, I will only become stronger, strong enough to defeat even you. In that instant, Lion Stark's resolve hardened like forged steel. He knew himself. His deepest drive was to grow stronger, and that strength existed to ensure no one could ever threaten those he cared for again. As his clarity ascended, the scene before him blurred, like a clumsy shadow play. This is an illusion? So I was still trapped. I'm still in the starry sky world. Lion Stark laughed at the sky. An illusion. Dares to make me give up becoming stronger? All of this ends now. The tribunal froze. The binding power holding Lion Stark inexplicably dissipated. The entire world shattered like a silver mirror cracking to the floor. Before Lion's eyes, the gigantic beast-like shadow in the Legacy Fortress reappeared. You broke the illusion. How is this possible? The shadow exclaimed, astonished. Your state of mind is very strong. It regarded Lion with newfound respect. Stronger than many immortals I've seen. The illusion you faced combined the illusionist's secret art with the law of time. I don't know exactly what you saw, but it must have been shaped from your subconscious, so vivid it could comprehensively test your mental state. I expected you to last a month in it. You broke through in a single day. Congratulations, you've passed the first assessment. The Shadow's attitude toward Lion improved visibly. Do you want to rest or continue with the remaining 2 assessments? Continue, Lion Stark said, voice steady. The hundreds of thousands of years he had seemed to endure were revealed as reflections of his own mental weaknesses. The illusion's law of time had hidden that truth so cleverly he had almost been fooled. Now, seeing it for what it was, the fragments made sense. The starry sky world's illusions truly were unique. I choose law comprehension, Lion declared, letting go of the remnants of the illusion. Chapter 125, Second Round of the Assessment, Good. Special lives are extremely close to the laws, and you happen to carry the attribute 0. This stage should be the easiest for you. The Shadow stamped its foot. A ring tens of thousands of kilometers across unfolded before them. This ring is a relic created by the dream-eating race in the previous reincarnation era, it explained. It relies on illusion secret techniques and has 2 modes. The first allows a user to enter mentally. The ring simulates 2 phantoms with identical physical attributes. Your consciousness takes one of them, kill the other, and you win. The second mode is for life forms at universe master level and below with single-shot genes. In that mode, your physical body enters the ring. The ring draws on cosmic energy it has absorbed to simulate entities at your physical level, but with varying degrees of law comprehension. In both modes, the opponent only uses the most basic law techniques. Your task is to defeat the first opponent within 1 month. The Shadow pointed at the dome in the ground. Those secret tech patterns include everything from basic light-speed fusion laws to 5th-order Lawmaster fusion techniques. You can use them for study. They'll accelerate your comprehension. Leon's eyebrows rose. Only the first opponent? Only the first, the Shadow said. Don't underestimate this ring. The people it simulates all have at least universe master-level law comprehension. The 10th simulated opponent already has immortal-level comprehension, the 21st is venerable level, and the 26th reaches law master level. You only need to beat the first because you are clearly still at the threshold of the law. But I recommend using the second mode. Life and death combat accelerates progress, and you have an original nucleus. You won't die so easily. Leon nodded. Understood. I'll try the second mode. He leaped onto the ring. A pulse swept through him, and seconds later, vast cosmic energy condensed 100 meters ahead into a person identical to Leon. A mirror copy? He muttered. He activated his biofield, accelerated time, and fused his movement with light law. Let's go. At light speed, he struck, throwing a full-strength punch that tore through his biofield. But as he closed, the figure he hit proved only an afterimage. His punch slammed into the ring itself. The blow, enough to shatter a surface, didn't so much as kick up dust. He pulled back to create distance, and then, in the blink of an instant, his head exploded. From behind him, the mirror figure slowly withdrew its punch. The whole exchange had lasted less than a 10,000th of a second. As expected, it failed. The Shadow stepped forward, lifted Leon from the ground, and drew a ring out of the depths of space. It slipped the ring onto Leon's right middle finger. Seconds later, Leon's head regenerated. He revived where he stood. He stared at his hands. I just died. My head was blown off. The time law is powerful, the Shadow said. Leon felt absurdly warm. Why do I feel like I'm basking in the sun? There is no sun here, the Shadow said, pointing to the ring on Leon's finger. Look inside. Leon turned the ring and sank his consciousness into it. Inside was a world, 1 trillion kilometers across. For a mid to late reincarnation-era lawmaster, that might be nothing, but for Leon it was an impossible treasure, and the world was packed with 100,000 suns, all yellow stars. His eyes widened as he looked back at the giant Shadow. The Shadow smiled. I knew this would be useful. Those suns were collected by Zero while wandering the universe. One to wreck. They're his usual snacks, and he still has 7 or 8 rings like this left. One meal is a ring full of stars, 7 or 8 left over, hundreds of thousands of suns. Leon felt a new urgency to pass the inheritance assessment. Don't get any ideas, the Shadow warned. No matter how much you want them, they're not yours yet. The ring is lent to you. It will only belong to you when you complete all the assessments. It used a time after image just now. the shadow continued. That's an extension of time acceleration. If your comprehension of the time law isn't enough, you can't beat it. I suggest you focus on time law first. Leon tapped his knuckles, fired up. Good. I'll focus on time law. He sat cross-legged and began studying the secret pattern map the shadow had pointed out. Though vast, the map contained only 18 patterns. Patterns 1 through 9 depicted lights and suns, illustrating the fusion of time and light laws. Patterns 10 through 18 showed fists and claws, cataloging countless secret techniques. The first pattern captivated him. Staring into it felt like staring into the laws themselves. Each stroke traced a grand law, and those lines branched out in Leon's mind into infinite possibilities. His hands moved of their own accord. Light swirled at his fingertips, and time left visible traces in the air. Days blurred. Leon would study, then fight. If his head was blown off, he'd seize the fleeting insight and return to study. He had his head blown off dozens of times. He went from being utterly helpless to fighting even in the exchanges. After one exchange, he fell into a sudden epiphany and remained sitting, staring at the pattern without blinking. A month has passed. The shadow's voice finally tolled like a great bell and pulled him back. If you don't stop now, you'll be overtime. Leon stood and blinked. Has it really been a month? Thanks for the reminder. How's your comprehension? Do you have confidence? The shadow sounded more anxious than Leon did. I think I can beat the third person, Leon said with a confident smile and jumped onto the ring. A mirror image materialized. Leon tapped his foot, then fused Lightspeed Law. Tens of thousands of after-images of himself filled the air and attacked. In an instant, the mirror image's head exploded and its form dissolved. Leon flexed his hand where the image had been. Does this count as revenge? He muttered. The after-images vanished. Can I continue to the next? He asked. Of course, the shadow said with a hearty laugh, an odd sound from a massive lizard-like creature, but Leon had already grown used to it. The second mirror image fell just as easily. The third fought back. They exchanged blows, and Leon was slightly outmatched. He took a heart-piercing wound and jumped off the ring to recover. He used the suns in the world ring to heal quickly. You reached the level of the third simulated person in one epiphany. Very good, the shadow praised. So now only the willpower assessment is left, right? Leon asked. That's right, the shadow said. Do you want to start now? Let's start. There's nothing more to prepare. Chapter 126, The Miracle of Zhangweishan. All right then. The giant beast god shadow rumbled and struck the ground. In an instant, the two vanished from the top floor of the fortress and reappeared at the foot of a colossal staircase standing alone in space. 4 symmetrical stairways climbed to a single platform at the top, forming a pyramid. Each step beneath the platform was hewn from a high-grade material that looked like flawless white jade, so hard Leon guessed even his full strength couldn't scratch it. The beast god inheritance staircase has 10,000 steps, the shadow explained. A cosmic-level individual can qualify for the inheritance by reaching 800 steps. This place used to be for god-general inheritances, it continued, but it was altered by Zhou before his death and became his personal inheritance. After the 100th step, each step will aid the cultivation of your divine body amplitude and soul amplitude. And for every 1,000 steps you climb, there will be a treasure left by Zhou as a reward. In every other test you've faced, your race, talent, and state of mind were screened. On these steps, only your willpower will be tested. Once you're ready, you can begin. I'll wait here. Having said that, the shadow spread its enormous limbs and lay down, watching Leon like a spectator settling in for a show. 1,000 steps? Doesn't sound too hard, Leon said and climbed onto the first stair without hesitation. At first, there was no pressure. Just as he took the next step, a dazzling white light shot down from the top of the staircase and merged into his forehead. A fragment of information popped into his mind, identical to the force exertion manual the beast god Shadow had given him earlier. These first 100 steps assist in cultivating force exertion techniques, the Shadow's voice said. I had planned to bring you here if you ran into trouble mastering force exertion, but now you don't need it. You told me if I couldn't master it in a month, I'd be eliminated, Leon replied. Would you really have brought me then? Did I say that? I never said that. The shadow muttered, then suddenly began to snore like distant thunder, feigning sleep. Leon shook his head and stepped onto the second stair. As the shadow had said, there was still no pressure. He began to climb with long, sure strides. At the 101st step, his chest tightened, as if a weight had fallen onto his soul. Two white lights shot down from the summit. One flowed into his mind, the other condensed into a mysterious jade box before him. The light that entered his mind was an amplitude secret art called Joe's Divine Body, divided into 10 layers. The manual explained that the steps could assist its cultivation. Each layer corresponded to 1,000 steps, and full cultivation could grant a force exertion amplitude 10,000 times greater. But Leon wasn't ready to cultivate that now. He opened the jade box. Inside lay a set of pitch-black battle armor, seamless and seemingly alive, radiating a mountain-heavy aura even while still. The sight sent a sharp sting through Leon's eyeballs, as if they'd been pricked, an indication of the armor's potency. This is an ordinary Supreme Treasure-grade battle armor, given as an encouragement before the real challenge begins. You might not know what a Supreme Treasure is, the Beast God Shadow said, now standing and leaning over to explain. A so-called Supreme Treasure is something even a Lawmaster would covet, it continued. This armor can nullify any attack below the ordinary Venerable level and reduce damage from Overlord-level Venerables to 1/10,000th. It's extraordinary. But for you, it may have a slight flaw. The shadow scratched its massive head. What flaw? Leon asked. To bind it, you need at least the willpower of a peak king, and to activate it, you need 10,000 times the power of a world master to provide sufficient energy. The shadow's tone was a little embarrassed. By power of a world master, I mean the basic strength of a peak world master at 1 times genetic factor. So I won't be able to use it until much later? Leon asked, closing the box. This fortress was meant to be buried in the primitive star, and those who would find it there are basically venerables, the shadow explained. Even though Zhou was a lawmaster, he couldn't have imagined his fortress would meet a cosmic-level inheritor. The first 100 steps for force exertion were mostly decorative, to make the inheritance seem complete. There are dozens of heavy treasures here that serve as ornamentation. Maybe once you pass the inheritance, you can try them out. Even heavy treasures are just decorations, Leon said with a smirk, as expected of a lawmaster. You said this is an encouragement prize, so even if I fail the assessment, I can still take it, right? He asked. The shadow's eyes twitched. You haven't even officially started the challenge, and you already think you'll fail. Of course not, Leon said, putting the jade box into his world ring. I'll succeed. The encouragement prize is superfluous. He stepped onto the 102nd stair. The shadow retreated and sat down again to watch. 103rd, 104th. As he climbed, the mental pressure increased slowly. Between the 100th and 600th steps, Leon's face remained calm, and he moved quickly. The strain didn't become severe until after the 600th step. At 601, his relaxed expression turned grave. The beast god Shadow, though it didn't need to breathe, seemed to hold its breath. After 600 steps, it's willpower at the Domain Lord level, and 800 is the Domain Lord limit. He's only cosmic level 9. This will be so difficult, it murmured. Willpower in the starry sky world generally rises with one's realm, parallel to physical strength. Leon already benefited from clear mind and insight state blessings, and a genetic factor amplified 100-fold, so his willpower reached the mid to high Domain Lord tier. Still, as he climbed, thin beads of sweat formed on his face. His body wasn't tired, but wave after wave of mental pressure struck his spirit like a tide. At 701, 702, the blows felt like a giant hammer pounding his mind. Leon gritted his teeth and pressed on, when the shadow suddenly called out, 751 steps. Well done. Leon's vision began to blur. Cold sweat beaded at his eyelashes and dropped into his eyes, but that wasn't why he couldn't see clearly. His spirit was so taut he'd cut himself off from the outside world. The continuous mental strikes felt like countless blades slashing at his soul. The sensation of being torn apart made him wish for death. With every step upward, the blades sharpened. 789th, 790th, he was sprawled on the stairs from the pain, nearly at his limit but still moving forward. This test was of will. The pain was in consciousness. Whoever could endure the mental torment would go further. Leon's one focus was to reach 800 steps. He had never backed down from the path to strength. All the pain that sought to stop him was suppressed by that single goal. His eyes were dark, yet fixed on the steps above. At 798, blood gurgled in the corner of his mouth. He bit his own cheek, using physical agony to counteract the mental. He imagined throwing punches in the dark of his mind at the pain itself. Punch, punch, pushing back. At 799, he trembled from head to toe. The healing light from his world ring repaired his body quickly, but could not touch the dreadful wounds in his consciousness. In the starry sky world, each major realm step brings thousandfold differences. Despite blessings, Leon still lagged by dozens of times. He had clawed through that gap with sheer will. Only one step remained. His raised right hand trembled as if it would fall from his arm. Alas, as expected, still not enough. Never mind. At most, I'll go back to that gloomy place and sleep for a few 100,000,000 epochs. The beast god Shadow's voice sounded beside his ear, full of regret. Little fellow, don't force it. The world ring and the supreme treasure are yours already. If you push further, your soul will be damaged. The shadow could see Leon's spirit had reached its breaking point. This young life had probably never known such hardship before. To get this far by talent and state of mind alone was praiseworthy, but Leon gave no outward sign of accepting the shadow's sympathy. He had no extra will to speak, only a roaring in his heart. No, I can't stop here. I must go further. I must succeed. From the day he'd first awakened to the Kryptonian bloodline, he had never retreated from becoming stronger. His past life's death and transmigration, and the cautious early years of this life, forged in him an unshakable drive. All his convictions braided into an indestructible cord that blocked the steps' mental assaults. As his inner cries reached a pitch, something inside him shattered in the sound. Deep in his genes, a golden light flared and spread through his body. His genetic factor surged like a rocket, 101 times, 102, 200 times. His willpower followed, transforming. The bone-deep, heart-wrenching agony that had pressed down upon him suddenly shrank to insignificance. He staggered to his feet and planted his foot on the final stair with a heavy thud. 800th step. Eh? How is this possible? Genetic factor doubled. Willpower advanced to World Master level. The Beast God Shadow exclaimed in astonishment. Leon stood on the stair, staring at his hands, equally astonished. Was that Superman's idealist ability? How is this possible? Chapter 127, Speculations about the Kryptonian Bloodline. Do you know what just happened? The Beast God Shadow asked, leaning closer. Leon was just as puzzled. I'm not sure. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Let me think. Maybe it's a hidden talent, the Shadow ventured. Some special life forms have talents that only activate later. It immediately shook its head. No, that doesn't fit. Even if it were a talent, this is too extreme. Before someone becomes a lawmaster, their genes wouldn't multiply 100-fold through later enhancement. Try it again, the Shadow said. Recall the sensation you had and try once more. Leon concentrated. That feeling was like my genes responding to my will. That sounded oddly like the Superman trope, power keyed to the mind, but Leon had never felt it before. It happened at the moment my will was about to break. I was trembling, but I was absolutely certain I had to reach the 800th step. The Beast God Shadow's voice sharpened. Yes, that's it. Hold on to that state of mind and feeling. Leon closed his eyes and hunted for the memory of that fragile, determined will. He bundled his consciousness into a tight thread and climbed. Step 801, step 999. The familiar pain of the limit slammed into him. Ah! Leon cried, forcing himself onward. This time, even as agony threatened to black out his senses, nothing miraculous happened. The shadow pulled Leon back down the steps. After he recovered, it said, "Your talent is more complicated than I thought." Exhausted, Leon lay on the ground. I wish it were simpler, he muttered, and suddenly missed Tony. If Tony were there, he'd have torn it apart and analyzed every possibility. Tell me about your birth, the Beast God Shadow said. I've lived longer. I might be able to give you some clues. Leon hesitated, then described as best he could the origin of his Kryptonian bloodline, a lineage tied to another existence similar to the Source Will, modified by that existence to a 100-fold gene increase and granted alongside a powerful traversing ability. The shadow frowned, staring at him like at a curious specimen. You're saying your Kryptonian bloodline came from an existence comparable to the source will, but it has a low upper limit and was only boosted to a 100-fold by that existence. That's impossible. The shadow paced, huffing. Not to mention how grand the source will is. It wouldn't stoop to tweak a cosmic-level being's body. Even if that other existence is real and near its level, it wouldn't hand you a Kryptonian bloodline with such a low cap. You must be misunderstanding something, the shadow kept insisting. Its words clicked in Leon's mind like a key turning in a lock. Right, of course. The original world wouldn't have generated a Kryptonian bloodline with such a meager ceiling. He'd received both the bloodline and the traversing power at the same time, and the traversing ability was extraordinarily potent. Twins don't end up worlds apart. Something that comes together should share depth. Leon's thoughts spread out like a power grid, connecting details. The way his traversing ability behaved when hopping worlds, how the Kryptonian bloodline accepted modifications without resistance, and how his genes and will had both changed at the moment he hit the limit. It's evolution and inclusivity, he said, resolved. My Kryptonian bloodline's true nature is evolution at the limit and a strong inclusivity. It can absorb and integrate external strengthening factors and systems. When it hits its ceiling, it transforms and evolves. I've been thinking about it all wrong. Just as my traversing ability can reach new heights, the Kryptonian bloodline can also grow stronger through repeated limit breaks. Leon's confusion cleared. He considered the two properties. Fusion was straightforward, like in the Resident Evil world, where even if his cells were immune to the S-virus, they could still incorporate the virus's mutative traits. Evolution was harder. From his single metamorphosis on the steps, it looked like evolution required a change in mind and will. The bloodline would then accelerate that shift and evolve with it. Rubbing his chin, he thought, this really fits that comic book rhythm where, in despair, you scream something like, "Never give up," and suddenly the tide turns. One thing's certain, he said. If my genes keep evolving, 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold, 100,000-fold, someday I'll be a silver Superman, a golden Superman, maybe even a supreme Superman. The beast god Shadow listened, baffled but intrigued. So you think you've figured out what you are? It asked, scratching its head. Those adjectives you used, not bad. I've never been so clear on something before. Leon pushed himself up. Then I must have passed the tests. The shadow studied him carefully, trying to read him. Finally, it nodded. You have passed? Congratulations. You've received the inheritance of the light-time beast god. It wiggled, its scale-covered tail swaying happily. Come, let me show you this fortress. The shadow stamped its foot, and the two of them were transported to an immense realm. Mountains, seas, and clouds stretched farther than the eye could follow. A lake flowed under their feet, and a courtyard sat atop a high peak. Everything was vast, mountains taller, clouds broader, waters wider, measured in millions of kilometers by Leon's estimate. This is the fortress's bottom layer, the shadow explained. When Shadow traveled the universe, he'd rest here. Everything you see, the clouds, the water, the earth, they're all treasures. Take whatever you want. Leon's eyes lit up. The shadow wasn't done. It pointed to the courtyard on the mountaintop. The world ring that contains a star is in that courtyard. You can go look for it yourself later. With that, it waved a thick forelimb, and they were gone to another part of the fortress. What met Leon's gaze this time was an impossibly vast library. Shelves marched in dense rows to the limits of his sight, vanishing into the distance as if endless. The giant beast shadow spoke. This holds most of the secret manuals collected by Joe, laws and fusion laws of every kind, up to the supreme secret arts of a lawmaster. You can cultivate any of these manuals. Only the lawmaster level secrets and the amplification secret arts are restricted. The rest you may freely copy and spread. Leon's sharp eyes picked out some technological devices tucked into a corner of the stacks. His mind flashed to Tony and Jarvis. He asked quickly, "Is there any technological knowledge from the previous reincarnation era here? Anything like a mechanical heart that could enable an intelligent program to evolve?" A question mark shimmered above the giant beast shadow. Technological knowledge? Why would you want such useless things? And you don't have a mechanical heart either? Planning to make one for your intelligent life? The beast added with disdain. As a beast god born a lawmaster, it looked down on tech. The shadow that represented its intelligent aspect sounded the same. Leon rubbed his forehead. I have an older brother and an intelligent butler. They need this stuff, he said. The beast shadow's expression softened. Good. You're not inclined toward those unorthodox paths. Remember, you are the successor of the great lawmaster Joe. You're meant to make the path of light time renowned across the universe. You cannot stray. It casually rummaged through a pile of devices and produced two little mechanical objects, no larger than its pores. Here, these are the best I kept. Leon took them. One was a head-sized light computer, the other a small metal box. This light computer is the data core from a spaceship Joe accidentally crashed into long ago. The Shadow explained. That ship was an immortal warship. Its light core should contain a wealth of technological knowledge. Joe picked it up when the wreckage drifted toward a life-bearing planet, otherwise he wouldn't have bothered. The other item is an evolution key. For a program to become a full intelligent life, normally takes millions of years. This key floods the program with data streams that compress the process into roughly a week without altering its essential nature. Leon nodded and placed both objects inside his inner world. Satisfied? The Shadow asked. Very, Leon replied. The beast shadow smacked its paw and led him back down to the bottom of the assessment stairway. This is the third level, where treasures are handed down. For every 1,000 steps you climb, you'll receive a supreme treasure reward. The reward at the highest tier is a set of peak supreme battle armor and a high-grade soul supreme treasure. Leon's eyes widened at the words, peak supreme treasure, but the beast just slapped its paw again and teleported them back to the dark hall of secret patterns. It pointed at the sky, an expanse of inscrutable symbols glittering like stars. This is the core inheritance ground of the top level. All the secret arts personally created by Joe are stored here. They cannot be disseminated. Next is the final fortress core. The beast shadow's tone hardened. It slammed its claws into the floor, and in an instant they were elsewhere. The final chamber, a black void pierced by a single golden light. Drawn closer, Leon could make out the source, a gilded sphere at the center. The sphere's surface looked identical in texture to the fortress itself, utterly smooth, without a single discernible mark, even under his enhanced vision. Surrounding it stood 8 gigantic beast sculptures, each 100 meters tall. Merely looking at them stirred an urge to comprehend their secrets, clearly another treasure as profound as the secret pattern diagrams. This is the core of the fortress, the beast shadow said. Those 8 beast god sculptures are inscribed with 8 fused law paths. They can be used for enlightenment. And now you must recognize this fortress as your master. The shadow pushed Leon up against the gilded core. Leon arched an eyebrow. Recognize the fortress as my master? Is the fortress a supreme treasure, maybe even a heavy stone? It's called the Time Fortress, the beast shadow replied. A palace-type peak supreme treasure. A palace-type peak supreme treasure, Leon whispered. Such a relic would be coveted even by true gods. The beast shadow grinned. You have a good eye. Its recognition condition is unusual. It requires a willpower 1 level higher than the cultivator's own cultivation. Joe spent trillions of epochs raising his willpower to true god level to bind it as master. You're luckier. Leon brightened. Perfect. My willpower is at world master level, while my strength is only cosmic level. I should be able to bind it. With that confidence, he placed his right hand on the gilded sphere and calmed his mind. A mental shock surged into his original nucleus. For his world master level willpower, it scarcely registered. Half an hour later, the Time Fortress accepted him as its master. When Leon opened his eyes, the giant beast shadow smiled with relief. It's done. Finally done. The inheritance has its successor, and I can at last be freed. The joy in Leon's chest drained away at that. What do you mean by freed? He asked. The giant beast shadow bowed its head. I am not an independent, intelligent life. I am composed of a fragment of memory and a portion of the divine power left behind by Joe. My purpose was to find a satisfactory inheritor. To protect this rootless divine power from erosion by time, I remained dormant for ages. Last month was my first awakening in trillions of epochs. I thought it wasteful of divine power, but in the end I found a successor and completed my mission. I am content, little one. I must thank you. You are truly favored by the source will. Even across endless time, few could catch its attention, let alone a mere cosmic-level being, but it approved of Leon. So that means the moment I obtained the inheritance, you were always destined to end. Leon's voice went quiet, heavy with loss. Before the rising desolation could overtake him, the giant beast shadow's massive paw shoved him hard. Leon stumbled forward, shoved out of the gilded core's chamber, tripping and nearly falling as the shadow's presence began to dissipate. Chapter 129, Your Origin Will Sends an Angel Investment Invitation. What kind of expression is that? The massive beast shadow roared. As a successor of the Zoe line, you are not allowed to show that. We, the beast god bloodline, only fight with indomitable spirit. My death happened in the last reincarnation era. Now I'm only fulfilling my final wish. I'm happy, so why are you sad? Leon replied. The beast shadow's voice rumbled like thunder. Enough. Next is the final step. His whole body erupted in an endless reddish-white light, divine power billowing outward like a river of stars pouring along the Orion arm. Prepare yourselves. To prevent the powerhouses of this reincarnation era from discovering anything unusual, he boomed. I will burn my divine power to send the Time Fortress into your inner world and disrupt the space-time here. In the next instant, the beast shadow solidified. His Lawmaster-level divine power enveloped Leon. Time seemed to both stretch and snap. Moments were lengthened into ages and then collapsed into an instant. When Leon opened his eyes again, he was back outside the moon. Space was empty. Behind him, he could still see thousands of human universe ships heading toward the moon. Time had returned to the exact moment he'd first arrived. If not for the fortress pillar standing in his inner world and the new knowledge lodged in his mind, Leon might have thought everything a dream. Time acceleration, a dirty chess trick. Is that a Lawmaster's method? He muttered, looking back at the moon, then preparing to return to the base where Hong and Lei Shen were stationed. Suddenly, a vast fluctuation descended. The source will reached out proactively. You have 3 days remaining, it said. Leon froze. 3 days? That's enough. But you gave me such an incredible inheritance and still leave me 3 days? How considerate. He patted his chest. Brother Will, I won't thank you yet. Don't worry. Once I reach True God, I'll come back immediately to help you deal with the Beast God crisis. Beast God crisis. Beast God! The Source Will's tone shifted, suddenly alarmed, its emotions bristling like a wary creature. Beast gods are nurtured by supreme rules and born to devour everything. Their birth signals the original universe's slide toward destruction. Leon sighed and slapped his forehead. I was so focused on improving myself, I forgot to mention it. The biggest crisis this reincarnation era will face is the Beast God. Here's how it goes. He briefly laid out the original timeline to the Source Will, emphasizing the importance of the protagonist, Luo Feng. Knowing the truth of the crisis and the identity of the savior in advance could only benefit the original universe's future and Luo Feng's. As for the longer-term worry that Luo Feng might someday seize the Source Will, Leon argued that an early investment in Luo Feng, giving him some advantages, would make it unlikely he would later seize control. That's the situation. Luo Feng is a grateful person. I suggest you build a good relationship with him. Leon added. Who knows, maybe when he becomes a lord in the future, he'll return one day to help you become a true life form, the Source Will said. Luo Feng, a lord. What about you? It asked, pausing between thoughts. What, me? Of course I'll help, Leon answered. Can you become a lord in the future? I don't know, but I'm confident, the Source Will replied after a long silence. You may return when you are a lawmaster. I will prepare some things for you. Leon arched an eyebrow. Good heavens, was the Source Will about to start a second round of angel investment? He couldn't help but spread a pleased smile. Good, of course good. It's settled then. 3 days later, Leon sat cross-legged in the void. Stars, suns, and moons wheeled behind him. He absorbed sunlight pouring into his body from the depths of the world ring. Every cell rejoiced. Mitochondria swelled and contracted like nuclear turbines, spouting lava-like power. Inside his original nucleus void, The galaxy that had formed during the first stage of his universe had already become enormous. It rotated constantly and had 8 spiral arms. At its center sat a giant spiral black hole, and 8 smaller black holes dotted the arms. At a certain point, Leon opened his eyes. Energy is sufficient. The galaxy will collapse, begin breakthrough. He willed all surrounding energy into his original nucleus. The inner galaxy began to convulse and expand. The suction of the 9 black holes surged. The arm black holes devoured the spiral arms. The central black hole absorbed and merged the smaller ones. The vast, brilliant galaxy collapsed, vanishing until only a single black hole remained in the original nucleus, swallowing the inflowing energy. It expanded and expanded. When it reached its limit, Leon's expression hardened. He controlled the black hole to collapse instantly, forcing all matter inward. Slowly, a gray sphere formed in the original nucleus, an alternate singularity. For an ordinary human, the breakthrough could have ended here. When breaking through to World Lord, they would open the gray sphere and create an inner world Big Bang. But Leon was a special life form who already possessed an inner world. After the gray sphere formed, it expanded again, overlapped with the original nucleus, and finally merged with it. Only then was his breakthrough complete. He had crossed the threshold and become a domain lord. That was not the end. The upgraded primordial genetic energy fed back through him. Every drop of blood, every cell, every bone altered at a fundamental level. His body sprouted golden patterns, imprints of the law etched into his flesh. His already near-perfect body was optimized again. The most noticeable change was acceleration. His ability to grow stronger sped up. Although the energy required to progress beyond Domain Lord rose exponentially, his reoptimized genes and body kept his breakthrough velocity high. "This is a Domain Lord. Incredibly powerful," Leon said, testing his new strength as he floated in the void. A typical first-stage Domain Lord measures around 2 trillion tons of force. Leon's genetic multiple was 200 times, so his base strength reached 400 trillion tons. With his 100-fold force technique, he could exert a terrifying 400 quadrillion tons. That was close to a normal World Lord's power, but still modest. Even the Moon, which orbits Earth, weighs 735 quintillion tons. On weight alone, his force could not compare. However, when his speed, enhanced by law, was considered, things changed. At near-light velocity, a full-force strike capable of breaking a planet was no longer unthinkable. "It's time to leave," he said, and looked back once more before flying toward Earth. Before leaving, Leon left a stack of secret manuals for Hong and Lei Shen, both of whom had just broken through to the star level. He also handed the giant egg of the Jinjiao Torch Beast to Hong. The Torch Beast's cloning talent duplicated its wielder's abilities and couldn't be stacked. It would be wasted on Leon, so it was better to leave it to his disciples. "You keep this for now. It might be useful later," Leon said. "If it hatches before I return, you and Lei Shen can discuss it, and one of you can take its body." Luo Feng would almost certainly have the world consciousness watching over him in the future. He might even be able to take control of special life forms. In any case, the Jinjiao Torch Beast was only a mid to upper level opportunity for him. It made more sense to let the two of them have it. "Master, please be careful on your journey into the universe," Hong said solemnly as he hefted the giant egg like a small mountain. Lei Shen rubbed his bald head and grinned. "Master, how did you cultivate so quickly? You're already a domain lord. Heh. When Hong and I go to the universe someday, we'll be counting on you for protection." "Get out of here. You two are cultivation maniacs who only want to pick fights every day. What protection do you need?" Leon waved them off. "Instead, you must protect Earth well. I'll go to the universe first to establish a foundation. Wait for you to find me." With that, his figure flickered, and he vanished from Earth in an instant, as if he had never been there. Lei Shen stared at the spot where Leon had been and felt a little stunned. "I still can't see any trace of Master's movement. Hong, how strong do you think he is now?" Hong patted Lei Shen's shoulder while carrying the egg. "At least 10,000 times stronger than we are. Only someone like Master is a true powerhouse. Let's both work harder. Next time we meet, we have to give Master a surprise." Even the shine on Lei Shen's head radiated something like fighting spirit. "Okay, Leon floated through the starry sky world space. When he activated his crossing ability to return, he noticed something odd. He'd spent 8 days in the starry sky world, but 10 days had already passed in the Marvel Universe. The time flow in the Marvel Universe moved faster. The energy cost to cross over on his initial trip had nearly consumed 100% of his stamina. Now, as he returned, that same crossing consumed less than 1/1000th of his stamina. It was astonishing. When he had arrived earlier, he'd had the strength of 2 million tons. When he departed, it was 400 quadrillion tons. He was more than 10 billion times stronger than when he'd first come. His power had advanced from surface level to planet-bursting level. That was the effect of a high-level world on a normal Kryptonian. Still, because he'd brought an inner world and a fortress back with him, the energy consumption spiked again, taking up 1/10 of his stamina. Leon thought it over, and out of caution, decided not to waste stamina. He'd shared a deep, meaningful glance with the Ancient One before leaving, disappearing for a fraction of a second, and then returning with a 10 billion-fold power increase would be too shocking. For the sake of a centenarian's psychological tolerance, he anchored the return to 10 days after he'd left, activated his crossing ability, and stepped back across. Kamartaj. Leon appeared in his dormitory out of thin air. It was night, exactly 240 hours after the day he had left. Moonlight poured through the curtains. He was about to leave the room when a tight frown crossed his face. Dozens of different gazes converged on him at once, as if dozens of people were secretly watching the very moment he returned. Leon looked around reflexively. Instantly, the dozens of gazes vanished, like mice caught stealing cheese. Only one remained. Using his supervision, he pierced the walls and saw the source, the Ancient One, meditating in the inner hall. He inhaled slowly, certain that he hadn't imagined the earlier scrutiny. Those gazes had been watching him, but who could spy on him without him noticing? Only multiversal-level beings. Vishanti might be involved, perhaps more than just them. Whatever the case, the scrutiny had not been hostile, only intensely curious. This is the crossing ability's fault, Leon mused. It probably touched every world consciousness in the Marvel Universe when I crossed over. In Marvel cosmology, there are world consciousnesses. What comics called the first firmament shattered, birthing the multiverse. Generations of multiversal consciousnesses followed. The current generation's personification should be eternity. Eternity exists in every Marvel universe as part of a greater being. Leon suspected those consciousnesses had been peering at him and his acquisitions like a group of siblings comparing curiosities. He imagined them saying, "Look, this kid brought something new from outside the Omniverse again." The thought grew absurd the more he considered it, so he cleared his mind and turned inward. After returning to the Marvel Universe, the transformation the Source Will had performed on him showed no ill effects. His strength continued to grow, aided by the 100,000 stars in his ring. His primal genetic energy could now be released from his body as well. The downside was that the laws of the Marvel Universe and the Starry Sky world didn't line up perfectly. Only parts of the light and time laws he'd mastered would function here. He would have to begin law comprehension anew in this universe. Leon spread his psychic perception over the entire Earth and saw Tony and the others working hard on the other side of the planet. And he saw scenes playing out in countless hastily constructed lead-lined shelters. "Having psychic power is a lot more convenient," he muttered. "Next I'll go see the Ancient One. She must be very curious about how the trip went." He pushed open the door and knocked on the inner hall. The Ancient One sat behind a table, looking at him with kind eyes and a mixture of admiration and wonder. "You're back?" she asked. "I'm back." Leon took the seat across from her. "Just 10 days, and I feel like a different person. The other world is incredible." The Ancient One poured tea and handed him a cup. He took a sip and smiled. "Master, your tea is still as good as ever." "As for the changes," she said, "they're obvious. You've strengthened. I need to keep cultivating too." "Just a little," the Ancient One said, tapping her folding fan. "I can't see through you anymore. How strong are you now?" Leon smiled and snapped his fingers. The air around them filled with countless minute prisms that expanded and folded reality into a mirror dimension, the energy of the spell drawn from his own primal genetic energy. It should be pretty good, he said calmly. The Ancient One felt the brief, immense surge of energy the instant the mirror dimension unfolded. To her senses, that energy was as vast as a star, capable of being as gentle as a breeze or as fierce as a blaze. It was an astonishing system of power. She looked at Leon, and the depths of her emerald eyes lit up with interest. Chapter 131. Zhang Guyi, what are you doing, Guyi? Not only is it possible, you've already surpassed me, the Ancient One exclaimed. Mr. Lion waved a hand. Don't be ridiculous. Every craft has its strengths. I'm stronger physically, but I'm nowhere near your level in magic. The Ancient One shook her head. Magic is a matter of accumulation. I can see you've already begun exploring the fundamental laws of the universe. That path leads straight to the true foundation of magic, Mr. Lion said. I can already foresee that one day you might become the next Vishanti, or even exceed them, the Ancient One continued. You could try to contact the three at Kamartaj through a special ritual. It would help your development. Development? Mr. Lion raised an eyebrow. There's no need. I've already found the right direction for my own growth. I don't need them. He pushed himself up by his knees. Besides, I don't need to study magic now. Once you understand the basic laws, performing magic becomes effortless. I'm here to say goodbye, Ancient One. Thank you for everything. Ancient One? Mr. Lion snapped his fingers to dispel the mirror dimension, but the Ancient One struck out with a palm at the same time and stabilized the space. She rose with a quiet smile. Mr. Lion, I'm very pleased with your progress. She formed a hand seal. The inner hall of the mirror dimension expanded infinitely, the doors on both sides stretching until they became walls. But there is one regret. You've opened a world inside you, she said, producing 2 rings of Ragador. Mr. Lion watched her defensive stance in confusion. Yes, I have. Ancient One, what are you doing? The smile left her face. The duty of the Sorcerer Supreme is to keep dimensional demon gods off Earth. By opening a dimension inside yourself, you've become half a dimensional demon god, Mr. Lion. The golden ring spun. That means I have to drive you out of this universe. Are you serious? Mr. Lion couldn't believe the Ancient One had gone so rigid. Her expression, hard and unyielding, the first he'd seen since they met, left no doubt. She wasn't joking. She flipped the table between them. Will you leave on your own, or must I make you? Ancient One, I was born on Earth. Mr. Lion narrowed his eyes. I can't just leave. If you're set on this, then you'll never stop me. He shot into the air. Out of respect for your years protecting Earth, I won't fight you, this time. But the Ancient One bent the mirror dimension. The ground surged and rippled like waves and forced her in front of him. You cannot leave. She struck at him with her palm. The shield rings in her hands transformed into the mystical fans of Ashtar. Yet, to Mr. Lion, she moved with almost snail-like slowness. He slid aside easily. Her sudden, inexplicable change of heart irritated him. Something felt off. Ancient One wasn't the sort to be bound by inflexible rules, and he hadn't officially become a dimensional demon god yet. If you attack again, I'll fight back, he warned. Mr. Lion grabbed the Ancient One's wrist and threw her several meters. Normally she would have cast a spell midair and landed gracefully, but she flew off like a kite caught in a gust. Even with his precise control over strength, he might as well have bet his biceps. He could have thrown a flea and left it unharmed. What was happening? As she fell, the ground beneath her suddenly peeled away like a trapdoor, revealing a bottomless pit. It was clearly a suicide attempt. Alarm bells rang in his superbrain. He dashed forward to catch her. In an instant, he was at her side and held her gently. The Ancient One was stunned, surprised that she had been saved. Then she smiled apologetically, tilted her head, and died. Holy crap! Ancient One, what are you doing? Mr. Lion's mind nearly broke. Even his superbrain stuttered, unable to process the sudden catastrophe. He collapsed the mirror dimension, carried her body back to the inner hall, and laid her down. A quick scan with supervision told him the cause: cerebral infarction. Sudden death from a stroke? The Sorcerer Supreme died of a stroke in the middle of the night? He felt 1,000 complaints welling up and stuck behind his teeth. Then he remembered, the Ancient One's shadow is still here. He sat cross-legged and used astral projection. His shadow, his astral self, left his core and materialized outside his body. He watched as the living, Ancient One emerged through the inner hall doors. He followed and found her standing on the training ground, looking up at the stars. Ancient One, what are you doing? He demanded. She gazed at the night sky as if reluctant to leave it. I'm looking for Kamar Taj's next Sorcerer Supreme, she said calmly. You mean me? Mr. Lion hadn't expected this at all. He'd assumed she'd pick Strange. After all, in the stories she called Strange the most outstanding of her students. What about Strange? What will happen to him? He can remain a doctor, or he can come to you and study magic, she replied, turning to him. Mr. Lion, you killed me. As compensation, you will assume the role of Sorcerer Supreme from now on. Mr. Lion's head spun with question marks. Did he actually kill her? Well then, fine. If this is how it was going to be, he pointed at the Ancient One in the air. You're not dying today. You will not die. I say so. His astral form floated back into his body. He bolted to the library, grabbed the Eye of Agamotto, and returned to the corpse. He'd memorized a revival method from the castle of Cagliostro. He formed hand seals, called on the Time Stone's power. A green light spilled out and washed over her body. Die? Not on my watch, he muttered. But the corpse only grew colder. A few seconds later, he cut the spell and crouched down to inspect. Dark symbols from the dark dimension had bloomed on her forehead, and traces of backlash marked her limbs. The dark dimension lies outside the single universe. The Time Stone cannot affect it, the Ancient One's shadow explained, as it broke back through from the spirit realm into the physical. You cannot use time to revive my body. Her tone was flat, detached, like telling a barber he can't fix a haircut because the person is bald. Leon opened his mouth and found himself utterly speechless. Chapter 132, Death of Zhang Gui. This death was thorough, almost considerate. She had even planned for possible rescue methods in advance. Leon felt a single capitalized word settle in his chest, impressed. He understood now. The Ancient One truly wanted to die. Ancient One, I can understand your wish to return to eternity, to be free of centuries of fighting the dimensional demon god, he began. But if you force me into this, I won't accept the role of Sorcerer Supreme out of obligation. He wasn't going to be blackmailed by her death. Do you think that just because you die, I'm automatically required to take up your burden and keep fighting the dimensional demon god? The Ancient One clasped her hands and smiled apologetically. All of Leon's life for the last 15 years had been on this earth. Of course he would protect it. Even if the Life Tribunal arrived, he would stand on the front lines. But she didn't believe that made it his duty. She treated her students as independent. Once they completed their training at Kamar Taj, she let them go without demanding repayment. She had protected the world for centuries, but she set rules only for herself, not for others. Still, she spoke in a consulting, gentle tone. Then, please, because I taught you magic, would you temporarily take the post? You'd only need to handle the basic duties to stand against the dimensional demon god, she continued. You wouldn't want Earth to suffer a dimensional invasion, would you? Leave the rest to Mordo. He's a reliable sorcerer, if a bit inflexible. When the time is right, you could pass the position to Strange. Her eyes and brow were soft as moonlight through a window, and there was an almost imperceptible plea in her voice. Leon watched her, and the refusal he had on his tongue slowly dissolved. If you die, I will protect Earth, he said, but that must be my choice. Besides, he added, have you looked at my future with the Time Stone? The Ancient One shook her head. I've looked, but it's not precise. For someone who can travel between worlds, the futures I see mean little. Then I must be frank, Leon said. It's not impossible for me to become Sorcerer Supreme. But you know me, I'm not like Strange or Tony. They avenge and defend after being attacked. I prefer to cut dangers off at the root. If I become Sorcerer Supreme, Earth may not be limited to a single dimension in the future. Her eyes widened. You mean you plan to invade other dimensions? Leon didn't hide it. I do have such a plan. So, do you still want someone like me as Sorcerer Supreme? The Ancient One's translucent form was stunned. She drifted to the window and stared blankly at the silent stars. The vast night sky, when projected onto Earth, made each distant sun seem like a pinprick. Earth itself looked like the whole world. The stars reflected in her eyes, and she let out a soft, almost wry chuckle. Even if I refused, it seems there's no other way, she said. I'm already going. Leon nodded, then produced a cup of shimmering water from his inner world. There is another way to bring you back, he said. Zeus spring water. It carries enormous life force. One cup, if the soul is still present, can revive a corpse dead for 7 days. The Ancient One felt the cup's strange energy. Leon explained. The water came from a pond 1,000,000 kilometers across on the first floor of the Time Fortress. It was originally Luotian water, used to aid comprehension of the time law, but the beast god Zeus liked to bathe in it. A naturally born beast god was a treasure. His bodily fluids could turn an ordinary person into a superhuman. Over eons, the Luotian water had been infused with Zeus's essence and had become extraordinary and divine. Leon had renamed it Zeus Spring Water. He rarely drank it. He might soak in it while studying the law. It was better used to heal others. The Ancient One could feel the water's vast life force. Where did this come from, she asked. Leon answered plainly. From the legacy of a dimensional demon god far stronger than Dormammu. Her mouth twitched. Then, surely that should be saved for a real emergency, she protested. Leon waved a hand. It's fine. It's not that precious. I even bathe in it. She fell silent for a few moments, then looked back up at the stars. Grand Sorcerer Leon, Earth's safety will be entrusted to you now. You haven't said whether you want to be revived, Leon pointed out. The cup tilted slightly. The Earth has always been coveted by dimensional demon gods, she said, unmoved. Say something, or I'll pour it, Leon threatened, making a theatrical show of readying the cup. Among them, Dormammu, Mephisto, the Eye Demon, Nightmare. The Ancient One began, but he was already tipping the cup. I'm serious. I'm pouring it now, Leon exclaimed as he pinched the corpse's mouth. A cough erupted, weak and surprised. Grand Sorcerer Leon? The Ancient One said at last. She gave in. All right, stop joking, she said. Let me go peacefully tonight. Seeing Leon's hand still starting to tilt, she added, After I'm gone, you will be Sorcerer Supreme. How you deal with the dimensional demon god will be up to you. Leon set the cup away. All right, go then. I'll see you in a few years in eternity and tell you the good news. The good news? She echoed, perplexed. That Kamartaj has become a holy land of the dark dimension, Leon said as if it were obvious. The Ancient One stared at him and sighed. If this had been strange, she might have said something about death being a final farewell and learning reverence. With Leon, she could only raise an eyebrow, shake her head, and say, Take it easy. I will. Goodbye? Leon raised his right hand in a small salute. Her final words were practical and firm. Goodbye, Leon. My contact with the dark dimension was out of necessity. That power is repulsive, but sometimes to protect the world, one must use power beyond the rules. You are far stronger than I was. If you can grow on your own, try not to rely on external things. Mordo is steady, but too unyielding when young. Your adaptability and strength will complement him. From now on, Earth is entrusted to the two of you. Her voice scattered into the moonlight. The Ancient One's ethereal shadow dissolved completely. Leon stood frozen for a moment, then looked down. The corpse on the ground had gone completely cold. Chapter 133, Supreme Mage Challenge. The next day, Kamartaj held the Ancient One's cremation according to Kathmandu custom. On a high platform of stacked wood lay the Ancient One in her usual beige robe, hands folded over her chest and abdomen, her face calm in death. Apart from the doctors on duty at the three sanctums, every resident of Kamartaj had gathered. They wore plain robes, faced the burning pyre, bowed their heads, and performed hand seals. The Ancient One had protected Earth for centuries. Everyone present had felt her care. Her death was the loss of a stabilizing force. Mordo stood at the front of the crowd, reciting a eulogy in Tibetan. Although the Ancient One was Excelt, she had long protected and integrated with this land. When the firewood finally burned out, Mordo closed his eulogy. Some doctors stepped forward to collect the ashes. Others wept quietly. By evening, the funeral was over. But there remained an important matter to announce. Mordo addressed the gathered doctors. The Ancient One foresaw her death 10 days ago. The words struck Leon like a pang. So she had planned this. Was she holding on long enough only to arrange her succession? The thought irritated him. Mordo continued, She told me, and many of you, that a little over a month ago we welcomed the most powerful and reliable doctor, Superman. Mordo pointed at Leon. All eyes turned to him. some curious, some approving, some shocked, none doubting. Who on earth did not know Superman? Even the remotest villages had heard the name. The doctors, of course, knew how powerful he was. They only found it odd that a physically oriented powerhouse would also be a doctor of the mystic arts. The crowd made a way. Leon walked to Mordo's side and said, "You can call me Dr. Leon from now on." Mordo studied him. Leon's return to Camartage the previous night had been followed immediately by the Ancient One's death. Mordo couldn't help wondering, had she held on to the end just to persuade Leon to accept the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme? Given Leon's power, perhaps there was no one on Earth more fitting. "She is convinced of Dr. Leon's strength," Mordo said. "Many of us witnessed his mastery of magic half a month ago." Leon had demonstrated on the training grounds, tapping Oshter's energy to unleash the crimson bands of Sitorak and channeling Setorok's power to summon the winds of Watumb. Those dazzling spells had left the doctors in awe. "He is undoubtedly the strongest doctor among us and our most reliable ally." The Ancient One said before her death, if she passed, the next Sorcerer Supreme would be Leon. Vishanti has approved this appointment. From now on, Archmage Leon is our new Sorcerer Supreme. Mordo's voice was solemn. The appointment of the Sorcerer Supreme affected the future of Camartage and of Earth. It was no matter for levity. When Doctor Strange had held the title, it had acquired a lighter reputation, but Mordo treated it with gravity. He led the gathered doctors in a salute to Leon. The plain robes bowed like a field of wheat to the sun. Leon returned the salute once they rose. His face was calm, but inwardly he was bristling. Vishanti's endorsement had already come through? The Ancient One had truly arranged everything. No wonder Mordo had not been surprised when Leon told him the night before that he would be the next Sorcerer Supreme. After the salute, Leon turned to Mordo. "Is that all? Doesn't the Sorcerer Supreme's inauguration usually involve trials?" Mordo nodded. "Normally, one must undergo trials set by the Vishanti and be tested by other powerful doctors. But since Vishanti has already approved you, those procedures would be unnecessary," he added. Leon looked around at the doctors. "Still, I'm new to this. It's better to fight so everyone can see my strength. That way we can have confidence facing future dimensional invasions." He spoke one way aloud, while thinking another. If he didn't establish himself now, there would be objections when he acted across dimensions later. A new leader often faces resistance. He intended to lay down a clear demonstration first. The assembled doctors stared at him, incredulous. Their expressions read, "You can tank nuclear blasts and you want to fight us? Do you mean to beat us to death on the spot?" Leon formed a hand seal and said, "I mean to use only magic." Mordo relaxed a little and asked quietly, "Are you certain? You've only been studying a little over a month." "Don't worry," Leon said firmly. "Just watch." "All right, if you insist." Mordo was still uneasy, but he announced the Sorcerer Supreme challenge. The Ancient One had reigned for so long that none present had ever taken part in this ritual. Hearing that Superman would not use his physical strength made many eager for the contest. Half an hour later, Leon stood in the center of the training ground. Doctors from Hong Kong, London, New York, and elsewhere formed a circle about 30 meters away. Even a Minotaur stood among them. Pairs and small groups chatted about the ritual, how ancient Sorcerer Supremes had assumed office, and the origins of the trials. Cantonese, English, and other languages braided through the air. The bustle eased the grief at the Ancient One's passing. Mordo stood beside Leon to explain the rules. According to custom, doctor groups from the various sanctums select representatives to challenge in turn, and if the candidate needs rest... Wait. Leon cut him off and scanned the circle. "I'm not like other Sorcerer Supremes. I'm more resistant to damage, even nuclear bombs. So all of you come at once." He added with a faint smile, "Of course, this isn't to slight you. It's to reassure you of my strength. If you do that, something will happen." Mordo began, but Leon silenced him with a hand and shoved him into the field. "Archmage Mordo will be one of you. All right, the challenge begins now." For a few seconds, the training ground fell silent. The doctors exchanged glances, hesitant. The sorcerers hesitated. If they took him on one by one, many of them would have been eager, some even itching to test themselves. But an all-out, coordinated assault, that was different. Not because they underestimated Leon. If anything, they believed his magic was formidable. It was because they couldn't let the newly appointed Sorcerer Supreme be humiliated right after taking office. Any one of them, given their preferred tactics, could end a duel in an instant with crimson bands of Sidorak. That thought made them cling to restraint. What? Not going to make a move? Then I'll start. Leon's snap cut through the tension. He'd staged this challenge to clear away exactly this kind of doubt. With that snap, the mirror dimension spread outward, swallowing Kamartaj in silence. Watch out, he warned. Leon turned his hand, and the ground of the mirror dimension stretched and writhed. The training field swelled to a kilometer across. The brick-laid surface rippled like a stormy sea. Each wave rose 4 or 5 meters and came down with overwhelming, relentless force, as if the sky itself were collapsing. Sorcerers who were too slow or too weak were submerged on the first swell. Only their heads remained above ground, bewildered and wide-eyed, as if uprooted and left like odd exposed crops. Those were the first defeated, about 60% of them. The rest reacted. Some hurled crimson bands of Sidorak to latch onto walls, others invoked winds of Watum for light leaps. When they landed and saw their colleagues half buried in the earth, any lingering scruples vanished. Leon had just shown he could conjure a mirror dimension that vast and control its interior with impeccable precision. He was already far beyond the ordinary sorcerer. Faces hardened. Incantations began in earnest. They spread across the field, encircling him. The librarian Wang moved into position, quietly tracing a ring in the air with his right hand, preparing a portal beneath Leon. Mordo crouched, both hands conjuring Vishanti's holy sword, his posture coiled like a leopard ready to spring. Others formed seals, arranged themselves in patterns, breathed deliberately. Together, they resembled a circle of executioners closing in on a target. Then Leon cleared his throat, small and casual, as if signaling the start of a feast. The sorcerers pounced. Portals opened from every direction, up, down, left, and right, trying to trap him. Nearly 100 crimson bands of Sidorak whipped toward him, targeting every angle of his body. Behind them stood dozens of Vishanti's swords and another 100 magically formed weapons. A handful tried to wrestle control of the mirror dimension itself, but none could overcome Leon's hold. Now that's more like it, Leon said. He formed a single hand seal, and seraphim shields sprang up, encasing him without a flaw. The mirror dimension obeyed him too. Long, rectangular blocks of earthen ground rose up through the portals, folding through the gaps and lifting Leon clear. The pincer of portals collapsed. The earth split. One half flipped skyward, the other plunged down, leaving Leon suspended, supported by several elongated stone slabs. The attackers faltered. Many of the sorcerers who'd been carrying the magical weapons misstepped and tumbled into the chasm the split created. The 100 crimson bands of Sidorak slammed into the seraphim shields and failed. Old Wang clung to a rock to keep from falling, teeth bared. He spun his sling ring, forcing the portal beneath Leon to shift upward. He still intended to teleport him away. Mordo looped a magic chain around a massive boulder and swung himself onto a building. When the ground flipped, buildings rotated. North sides pointed up, roofs became sideways walls. Seeing Mordo, the remaining sorcerers leaped onto the newly upright north faces. Dozens more portals opened, and sorcerers from other terraces teleported back into the fray. Leon stepped off the earthen blocks, avoided Wang's upward-wrenching portal, and casually extended a building with a gesture to catch himself. He never used any exceptional physical force, only magic. My turn. His hair barely moved as he formed a single seal and conjured a Vishanti's holy sword. Given how much he used it, it might as well be called Leon's holy sword. He channeled his genetic primal energy into spellcraft with it. The golden blade shot forward, and with a seamless transition into the form of Icon, began to multiply. Form of Icon was a duplication spell. Beyond creating decoys, it could replicate magic weapons. The Vishanti's sword split and split again, into thousands, then tens of thousands, an impossible rain of golden blades descending on the sorcerers. Quick, combine defensive spells, construct a composite shield, Mordo barked. Hundreds of sorcerers responded, summoning seraphim shields that merged into a single energy barrier spanning hundreds of meters. The golden swords pelted the shield, creating ripples and muffled impacts that gradually faded. Mordo didn't stop. Those who can use bolts of Balthak, join me now. Arch-Sorcerer Mordo, isn't that overkill? Wong grunted from his perch on the rock. It's too late not to use it. Mordo snapped, and he was the first to call down a bolt of golden lightning. Dozens of golden bolts of Balthak leapt and braided across the buildings, a dense current of electricity coursing from surface to surface. That magic could traverse material contact, gaining force with each bounce. It was among Kamartaj's most devastating offensive techniques. Few in the sanctum could master it and fire it this quickly. The bolts snaked and converged on Leon like a swarm of living lightning, bursts of thunder rolling in a continuous roar. Leon didn't back away. He advanced into the surge, not to rely on strength, but to meet it with spellcraft. He formed a mudra and unfurled a golden shield, the ancient spell of Hoggoth. The bolts of Balthak had already turned orange-yellow from their multiple bounces, a stream 2 to 3 meters thick. Anything less than a god might have fled. When the lightning struck Leon's golden shield, the impact detonated and, in an astonishing burst, the entire lightning stream and the light shield shattered into thousands upon thousands of emerald butterflies. They fluttered outward in a shimmering swarm. Hoggoth's ancient incantation had done exactly what it was meant to do, to neutralize incoming assaults, especially energetic ones, and convert destructive force into something harmless, beautiful, harmless butterflies that filled the air and scattered the threat to nothing. Emerald butterflies drifted across the sky like clusters of crystal catching the sun. Mordo stared, slack-jawed, as they fluttered past his face. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Hoggoth's ancient spell actually blocked dozens of bolts of Balthak cast together. Magic changed with its master. Revered Lion possessed an endless reserve of primal genetic energy. Even basic spells could be pushed toward planetary-level force if he willed it. The gathered masters stood stunned as Lion, half amused, addressed them. "Why are you all staring at butterflies? What is this, a turn-based combat game?" He smirked. "Then it's my turn." He waved his right hand and repeated the trick, but this time he cast Form of Econ on himself. In an instant, thousands of revered lions shimmered into being, hovering in the air. Each one summoned a fan of Osther that sliced like a blade. Mordo's forehead creased. He barked orders for protective shields. But thousands of magical blades swept through at once. The shields shattered like blown glass. The clones, fighting 2 and 3-on-1, overwhelmed the remaining masters in a few tidy exchanges. "The Sorcerer Supreme Challenge ends here," Lion announced. When even the most stubborn, unassimilated master fell, Lion snapped his fingers. The clones dissolved along with the mirror dimension. The thousands of masters staggered back onto the training ground, some bedraggled and dirt-streaked, others dazed with vacant eyes. The bedraggled were those Lion had bested personally. The dazed were the majority who'd been buried at the beginning of the trial. Their emotions tangled. Grief for the Ancient One's death mixed with a strange relief that the new Sorcerer Supreme was so powerful. Then shame set in, because they had been beaten so easily. They had feared making Lion lose face. Instead, he hadn't even tried and had already defeated them all. He'd only studied magic for a month and yet outclassed them like a storm. Silence settled over the training ground. A scattering of tired sighs was all that broke it. Lion felt no remorse. He chuckled and walked to Mordo, giving the dark-skinned master's foot a casual kick. "See? I told you I was confident." Mordo swallowed his irritation, exhaled through his nose, and finally said, "The Ancient One made the right choice. You beat everyone on the first day." "Don't be melodramatic." Lion raised an eyebrow. "This is courtesy before force. No, wait. Team building." "Team building?" Mordo echoed. "It builds understanding among the masters." Lion spread his hands. "After a fight, everyone knows me better, so useful, right? And that was just the beginning." Lion clapped to draw attention. Mordo braced for another assault, but instead, Lion produced, out of nowhere, a giant lobster. It was 8 meters long and 2 meters wide. "Thank you all for participating in the Sorcerer Supreme Challenge. You've worked hard. Come, let's have a simple dinner." Lion's hands moved like iron tongues. He peeled the shell in a few deft motions, conjured fire with a flick, and grilled the beast right there on the training ground. Oil, flips, seasoning, each movement flowed with effortless magic. In minutes, the air filled with an irresistible aroma. The golden crust of the lobster made the master's eyes brighten. These came from another dimension. You all must try them. To suit his Sorcerer Supreme role, Lion did everything with magic. He called down the Sword of the Vishanti to carve the lobster into portions and then used spells to distribute them. The masters, who had been tense and solemn minutes before, dove in with unexpected enthusiasm. Dimensional creatures weren't new to them, but a dimensional lobster was a novelty. Even the perpetually severe Mordo hesitated, took a bite, and then abandoned pretense. He ate heartily, cheeks reddening with satisfaction. Suddenly, an old master with a Taoist topknot, Master Hamir, leapt up. "Ah, my body!" he cried. "Master Hamir, what's wrong?" Mordo sprang forward, alarmed. He knew Hamir well and feared poisonous meat or a cursed bite. "No, my body. It's healing." Hamir's topknot bobbed as he waved his hands, exhilarated. He pushed past Mordo and gripped Leon's shoulder with his one good hand. "The damage I took using magic is recovering. This is incredible. Revered Lion, thank you." He bowed deeply. The rest of the masters checked themselves and found more than a pleasant meal. The food had eased aches, closed small wounds, and mended lingering damage. Gastric perforations were improving, limb dysregulation easing, lost senses like smell and touch slightly recovering. "This is amazing. What dimension is this meat from?" a master named Daniel demanded. "Starry Sky World," Lion replied with a smile, producing more lobsters. "Don't get greedy. There's one for each of you. Eat up." Those creatures were hunters from the Starry Sky World's rivers, monstrous lobsters at roughly apprentice first to fourth order in strength. Lion had rounded them up when they crawled ashore and stored them in his inner world as backup provisions. They carried the RR virus and terrifying vitality, but after Lion's simple treatment, they were harmless, green food suitable for the masters of Kamartaj. Everyone took a lobster and rejoiced. But another problem quickly presented itself: the shell. "What is this shell made of?" "My cleaver's edge is curling," Master Wong complained, hacking at it with a butcher's knife. Some used the mystic art of portals to get cuts through the crust. Others displayed lesser-known techniques. Mordo, emboldened by Leon, used the Sword of the Vishanti to cleave his portion, his expression one of eager, almost hungry reverence. It wasn't that Mordo's principles had shifted, only that Lion gave so much that resistance was pointless. The feast melted away their sorrow. By sunset, with emptied plates and eased pains, the Ancient One's death felt less heavy. Lion's presence had already begun to fill the void. If anyone dared now to call him unfit for Sorcerer Supreme, they would likely be dismembered by a dozen disapproving hands. Conversation faded into contentment as they ate. Between Wang and Mordo, Lion quietly assigned responsibility. "Wang, you'll handle internal affairs and magical instruction. Mordo, you take care of external crises." He grinned. "From now on, you two are my sleeping dragon and young phoenix." In ancient times, Sun Quan relied on Zhou Yu for foreign affairs and Zhang Zhao for internal ones. We're no worse than them. Kamartaj will rely on you. Good, good, Mordo mumbled, his head clouded by warmth and food. "But who are you talking about?" he added, half asleep. Lion filibustered, adding, "They were the greatest masters in history." He suddenly frowned and stood up. "Someone is watching me." "What? Who dares observe Kamartaj? A dimensional demon god?" Wang snapped up. "Spatula forgotten." "No." Lion drew a circle in the air and opened a mystic portal. On the other side, seated on a high throne, was Odin. "Oi, Odin, what are you looking at me for?" Lion called, and with that he stepped through into Asgard. Chapter 136. Zhang Modu's mood fluctuates. Although it was his first time meeting Odin in person, Revered Lion's attitude was anything but deferential. He looked like he had come to demand an explanation. The calculus was simple. It was one thing for some overwhelmingly powerful being to spy on him. He couldn't fight someone far stronger. But how dare an old man like Odin pry so openly? Did he think the sling ring in the hand of the newly appointed Sorcerer Supreme was easy pickings? Even compared to the Odin of the comics, this Odin's power was on another level. Even if the Odin of legend, who could casually destroy a spiral galaxy, arrived, Revered Lion wouldn't be afraid. At worst, he could pull the Time Fortress from his inner world. You have the Destroyer armor. I have a top-tier relic. Even if he couldn't use it at full power, merely displaying it would keep anyone in check. Besides, although the Asgardians' divine power grows with age, their bodies can't always withstand that increase. Odin was already on the verge of physical collapse, near the Odin's Leap. Did he really want to risk a fight that might send his divinity out of control and destroy Asgard? Hmm? Is that you, the new Sorcerer Supreme? Odin's single eye flicked toward revered Lion as the All-Father sat on his divine throne, leaning on Gungnir. He hadn't expected the man he'd been spying on to sense him and appear so quickly. Odin felt slightly embarrassed but made no apology. He was no one to haggle over minor slights. He had seen many Sorcerers Supreme on Earth, and only a handful had earned his respect. The Ancient One was not someone to be found twice. "Welcome to Asgard, wizard from Midgard." Odin looked down at revered Lion stepping through the portal. The Golden Palace was a miniature kingdom of the gods, with the All-Father looming above and radiating an authority that humbled all who stood beneath him. Revered Lion stood at the threshold as if about to be crushed by Odin's majesty. On the other side of the portal, Wong and Mordo followed. "Wait, revered Leon? You mean Odin?" "Asgard's odd." Mordo's words died. The two younger wizards were stunned the moment they entered the palace. The dome, the endless divine presence, everything made them feel like ants before a god. They turned to stare at Odin, then back at revered Lion. Their new Sorcerer Supreme was staring straight at the All-Father with a cold, unwavering gaze. He didn't move forward to bow and exchange polite words. After a beat, they kept their distance and grew serious. Wang, who had been chewing on shrimp, went still and quietly slipped on his sling ring. Mordo made a ritual hand sign and steeled his voice. "Greetings, Sir Odin. We appreciate your hospitality, but we came to ask why you intruded on Kamartaj. The Ancient One told us we would be reliable allies. Why immediately after her passing would you overstep like this?" Mordo spoke neither meekly nor arrogantly. He positioned himself as Kamartaj's representative. Then he leaned toward revered Lion and hissed in his ear. "Revered Lion, that's Odin. Calm down. One wrong move now could start a war between our peoples. And we can't beat him." Mordo's knees trembled. Stories of Odin from Norse myth and what he'd learned at Kamartaj made him painfully aware of the God King's might. He'd never imagined he'd be the one to confront such a being. He just wanted revered Lion to smooth things over so they could return to guarding Earth. Revered Lion smiled at him with a satisfaction that set Mordo on edge. "Well said." Lion slapped Mordo's shoulder. "Odin heard you. Before guests are entertained, our Mordo deserves an explanation." Cold sweat rolled down Mordo's face. He felt the world go numb. This damned revered Lion, as Sorcerer Supreme, had pushed him forward to take the blame. Mordo's lower lip trembled. He turned, ready to glare. But revered Lion had already shrugged off his outer coat. Black substance spread over Lion's skin, wrapping him in a dark, form-fitting suit that traced every muscle. It wasn't the smooth Superman outfit Mordo had seen in pictures. This was angular, like hardened battle armor, sharp and imposing. Mordo had no idea it was an otherworldly combat garment called the Black God Suit, a defensive relic able to withstand impacts of up to 500 tons and able to shift its form at will. The suit changed Lion's aura. Suddenly, his presence felt like an inverted mountain, oppressive and suffocating. Mordo felt as if something pressed at his eyes, nose, and throat. His head throbbed. He shook himself and looked again. Lion had returned to his usual handsome self, the suit seemingly gone. Mordo wondered if he'd hallucinated the whole thing. But Odin was on his feet, having risen from his throne in evident shock. Silence fell in the palace. The white-haired All-Father stared intently at revered Lion, his single eye fixed and wordless. Mordo's heart pounded. He thought war was inevitable. Then, unexpectedly, Odin sighed. The sound drained arrogance and age from him. His posture, once regal, bent slightly, as if the weight of years pressed down. "I am very sorry, Mordo." Odin's voice held an unexpected softness. He seemed to be speaking across to everyone, but his eyes remained on revered Lion. "I came to Kamartaj because I heard of the Ancient One's passing. I could not help but want to see an old friend one last time." He took a few steps down the throne steps, the sorrow of a very old being apparent in every movement. "Please understand the uncontrollable grief in my heart. An old man who has lived longer than he can remember, hearing of another old friend's death." Odin stopped before revered Lion and looked up at the young man, who was only slightly taller than him. To Odin, Leon seemed extraordinarily young, practically a child in a lifespan like his. There was wistfulness in the All-Father's single eye. Then, unexpectedly, he offered a small compliment. What a fine battle suit, esteemed Sorcerer Supreme. If you require such things, Asgard has many treasures. Accept a few as gifts to mark your new appointment. Chapter 11. Battle. Kamar-Taj versus Asgard? It's unreal. Odin is actually backing down? Even with Mordo's slow political instincts, he understood at once that something unseen must have passed between Leon and Odin. Maybe a confrontation had started and ended in a realm he couldn't perceive, and Leon had come out on top. Leon was clearly more than a sorcerer who could only defeat ordinary rivals. As the new Sorcerer Supreme, he could stand on equal footing with other dimensional demon gods. Mordo quietly stepped back a few paces, yielding the floor to the two great figures. Beside Wong, he noticed the librarian had at some point picked up eating shrimp again. "Wong, aren't you nervous?" Mordo couldn't help asking. Wong shrugged. "Leon won. Why should I be nervous? You saw their battle? How did you watch it?" Mordo's eyes widened. "What battle?" Wong popped a shrimp into his mouth. "Didn't Odin blink first just now?" Mordo fell silent. "I didn't mean that literally," he muttered. He stood with his hands at his sides and listened to Leon and Odin. The more Mordo heard, the weaker his knees felt. He almost lost his balance. Leon seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. "The Ancient One has passed," he said, "and you'll all want to offer condolences, right? Don't do it separately. Give them to me. I'll take them together." Odin's smile only widened when Leon began asking for gifts. "Of course," he said. "If you like, I can show you Asgard, and then we can visit the treasury." "That's not necessary," Leon declined. "I only want two things, the Casket of Ancient Winters and the Eye of Agamotto. It would be even better if you would lend me the Eternal Flame for a while." Leon wanted the casket and the Eternal Flame to aid his study of cosmic laws. He didn't directly press openly for the flame because of its link to Asgard's fate. The Eye of Agamotto, however, rightly belonged with the Sorcerer Supreme, the artifact of Agamotto, one of the Vishanti, used to foresee cosmic crises. According to legend, Odin had even used it to learn of Ragnarok. Leon knew how sensitive the request was, and yet he asked for it. Odin's smile faded slightly. "The Eye of Agamotto is indeed an artifact of the Sorcerer Supreme. You may take it, that would be proper." He sounded willing, then hedged. "The Casket of Ancient Winters, though, is a frost giant relic. Other races find it difficult to wield. It can harm them, even as guardians." Odin carefully omitted mention of the Eternal Flame. "How about," he began. "Your Majesty Odin," Leon interrupted, switching the subject. "Where are your two princes today?" "They regretfully accompanied Frigga to Vanaheim," Odin replied with a trace of doubt. "Otherwise, I'm sure you young people would have gotten on better than this old man." He added, trying to be light. "When they return, let me spar with my sons. If I win, you hand over all three artifacts. How about that?" Leon knew Odin would refuse. He only smiled as if considering the offer. "Then how about this?" he said slowly. "Let the sorcerers of Kamar-Taj, excluding me, fight the warriors of Asgard, excluding you and the queen. It will be 5 from each side, each competitor fighting once. Best of 5 matches. If your side wins, we ask for nothing. After all, friendship and harmony are more important. If Kamar-Taj wins, return the Eye of Agamotto and lend us the Casket of Ancient Winters and the Eternal Flame for 5 years." Compared to Leon's earlier, bolder proposal, this was more measured. Fighters switched, and the spoils were altered, from outright gifts to a 5-year loan. Odin found himself impressed by Leon's tact. Of course, unaware of Leon's intentions, Odin didn't realize that Leon's 5 years could be stretched indefinitely by using interdimensional travel and time differentials. The sorcerer speaks wisely," Odin conceded after a long moment. "A sparring match between allies is a token of friendship. I agree." He was also curious to see the caliber of Kamar-Taj's sorcerers and hoped the contest would teach Thor not to be so frivolous. If he could witness the strength of those outside the divine realms, he might grow a little more serious. "When shall we hold it?" Leon asked. The challenge had been spontaneous. Acquiring artifacts was only a bonus. His real aim was to test Kamar-Taj's ranks and temper the sorcerers for the threat of other dimensions. Odin's eyes narrowed. 4 months from now, by Midgard time, on your Christmas day at the end of the year. You're inviting us to celebrate the holiday here? Leon laughed. Of course. He reached out and took Odin's hand. Then it settled. As soon as they agreed, a contract, witnessed by the Vishanti, formed in their palms. Odin started at it, tiny lines of script appearing, outlining the exact terms they had just discussed. He was startled. The Sorcerer Supreme had come prepared. Too late to back out now. The agreement was sealed under a witness like the Vishanti. Leon patted Odin's shoulder with a smile. Your Majesty, Odin, it has been a pleasure. I see you have duties to attend to, so I won't overstay. We'll meet again in 4 months. With that, he gathered the 2 stunned sorcerers and opened a portal back to Earth. The lobster feast wasn't finished. He hurried back to it. Alone in his hall, Odin sat on his throne, Gungnir in hand, staring at the contract in his palm. He had thought long and hard, and still believed his side hardly stood a chance of losing. The Kamartaj sorcerers drew their strength from dimensional demon gods. Outside Earth, without the protection of the 3 Sanctum's magic circles, how could they match Asgard? Yet when he tried to dismiss it, Leon's confident smile kept flashing in his mind. Odin sighed. If only Thor had half of his ability and composure, I would be at ease. On the other side, the trio returned to Earth. The moment the portal snapped shut, curious sorcerers swarmed around them. Revered Lion hadn't even begun to explain before Mordo doubled over, clutching his head. My Vishanti, Revered Lion, I never imagined you could be so strong, actually forcing Odin to back down. He was stunned, then immediately worried. But wasn't the deal you made with Odin too rash, he asked. Asgard is full of gods. They're physically powerful, and they use magic too. It'll be very hard for us sorcerers to win if we fight on their turf. Mordo had always been serious. Even now, still shaking and sweating, his mind raced ahead to the coming battle in 4 months. He wanted to win. You don't think we can beat them? Revered Lion turned to him. It'll be very difficult, Mordo admitted. Revered Lion raised his right hand into a fist and conjured an energy whip with his left. This, plus this, he said, and projected a magical image into the air. In the illusion, a gold and red armored suit rocketed into the sky. On a mountaintop, a giant green monster roared. 10 magic rings tore the ocean apart. Do those people have a chance against Asgard? Lion asked. Yes, they might, Mordo said slowly, but they aren't sorcerers. You don't think they look like sorcerers? No, but they are sorcerers, Lion insisted. Direct disciples of Kamartaj, trained from childhood. Just specialized a little too much, Mordo countered. Nowadays, sorcerers are inclusive, Lion said with a wry smile. Who's to say someone who casts a light spell and then hacks a dragon with a chaotic blade isn't a sorcerer? Who can say a person in an Iron Man suit isn't secretly casting spells inside? His words left the gathered sorcerers speechless. You mean to call in Iron Man and that green fellow as outside help? Daniel asked, a twitch at the corner of his mouth. Many present hesitated. Losing to Asgard would be a loss of face for Kamartaj, but openly hiring outside fighters felt like a dishonorable shortcut to these proud, righteous men and women. If you object to outside help, then train, Revered Leon replied. I'll train Wang and Mordo in some combat-oriented magic, and they'll teach the rest of you. 4 months from now, if you can beat or even draw with those outside fighters, you'll take part in the battle. If you lose, don't take it to heart. And the 2 you saw in the image? Someone asked. I'll teach them magic too, Lion said. By then they'll be considered members of Kamartaj. That answer eased the tension. The sorcerers brightened and felt motivated. What sort of magic will you teach us? They asked in unison. You'll see, Lion said with a mysterious smile. But not now. Don't forget, our dinner isn't over. From his inner world, he produced a giant deep-sea octopus, tens of meters long. Come and see this beauty. Guaranteed delicious, he announced, casually starting a fire and setting up grills. Tonight we mourn the Ancient One's passing. Tonight I become Sorcerer Supreme. Tonight we resolve to defeat Asgard. Tonight is our last revelry before the real war begins. After tonight, the dimensional demon gods and hell lords who desire Earth will all know the Ancient One is gone. Who will sing something stirring to mark this unforgettable night? He asked. The first one to eat will be the singer. The sorcerers, stirred by Lion's words and the promise of barbecue, immediately volunteered. Grandmaster Hamir, clad in an ancient Taoist robe, was first to stand and chant a solemn sutra in the center of the training ground. His faint, measured chanting sent a few of the more devout into a trance and nearly put the rest to sleep. "No, no, something inspiring," someone shouted. Old Wang, always a dependable presence, pushed Hamir aside and tried to sing an old Chinese song, "My Ambition in My Heart." A young sorcerer promptly shoved Wang aside. "Ancient songs are out. Let me. I believe I can fly." The impromptu concert went on until the food was ready. Dinner stretched over 3 hours. When the last of the sorcerers finally left through the portal, their bellies were full and their faces content. A few hummed the tunes and lingered, not quite ready for the night to end. Revered Lion had Mordo and Wang use the winds of Watum to clean the training ground. He watched them huff and puff and thought the Ancient One's funeral should be a celebration like this. After all, she had faced death with serenity, even a kind of eagerness, so why mourn in sorrow? Better to dance on her grave and send her off with a send-off that felt like a retirement party. He was about to depart when Wang and Mordo, having finished, stopped him. "What are you doing?" Lion asked. Mordo fumbled, eyes averted, hands clasped behind him. About what you said earlier. When will you teach us the new magic?" Wang jumped in to confirm. "Yes, when will you teach us?" "Teach you magic?" Lion gave Mordo a peculiar look. For a moment, he'd misread the posture for a confession and had been preparing to rebuff it. This awkward, hesitant posture, asking a teacher for guidance after only a month of learning, felt like an old-fashioned courtesy from another era. Lion couldn't help but inwardly roll his eyes at the antiquated formality. "What's the hurry? I'll teach you for sure," Revered Lion said with a wave. "Wait, Lion, Reverend Lion, at least tell us what kind of magic it is." Wang's curiosity got the better of him. He and Revered Lion had been friends since Lion studied here, and today Wang had been using all the polite phrases he normally reserved for him. Revered Lion stopped and shook his head. "Even if I told you now, you couldn't learn it. You and Mordo will need to arrange the affairs of the sanctum for the next period," he continued. "For this training, you two will probably be gone for several months." The agreed battle with Asgard had been intended to temper Kamartaj's mages, to push them toward proactive combat and make it easier for them to follow him into the dimensional worlds later. Winning was still the goal, of course, but Revered Lion had thought of ways to give Kamartaj an edge. He had considered borrowing power from his inner realm for the students, but a quick experiment showed his inner realm was still immature, its transmission range too narrow and too inefficient. He probably wouldn't solve that until he became a world master or even an immortal, a true dimensional demon god. So he came up with a second plan: introduce new magic into Kamartaj's system. As the Sorcerer Supreme here, he had to bring something different. He'd noticed that Marvel's wizardry could draw on nature and internal energy, which reminded him of the wizard system in the Harry Potter world. That world was primitive for him, but it could enrich Kamartaj's repertoire. He wasn't going to stay at the sanctum day and night like the Ancient One, so he planned to send Wang and Mordo to Hogwarts. When they returned, they could teach spells like Avada Kedavra and, more importantly, Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus would be miraculous against Asgard. 9/10 of those barbarians' strength lay in their weapons. If the mages could disarm them right after battle started, half the fight would already be won. Going to Hogwarts would take at least a few days, and Lion had already handed the sanctum's affairs to Wang and Mordo to manage. They would need time to sort everything out. Several months? We're going to Asgard to learn their own magic and use it against them? Wang and Mordo exchanged looks. Not a bad idea. If we win, I'll mention it to Odin and try to get you two in as exchange students for a year. Revered Lion casually drew a circle and opened a mystic portal. You two get the sanctum's daily work done as quickly as possible. I'll go home for a few days first. Call me when you're ready. He stepped through the portal and vanished. Wang scratched the back of his head. By the way, what's his number? I don't know, but didn't you just see a big green monster on the other side of the portal? The one he showed us earlier? Mordo's eyes widened. Could Revered Lion already be recruiting outside help? They stared at each other in shock. How could they possibly beat such a terrifying creature? No, hurry and finish the work. If Lion's collecting fighters, he might call everyone. The two rushed to their stations and prepared to work through the night. On the other side, holy crap! As soon as Revered Lion closed the portal, a whoosh passed his ear and a huge fist came at his face. He turned, casually caught the incoming arm, lifted, and slammed the owner into the ground. He glanced around at the ruined street and the scattering people, ordinary citizens being shepherded away by agents, and saw a black behemoth striding from the corner. It only needed 2 steps to reach him. That black giant was, of course, Tony. He'd upgraded his armor again. The suit was black and massive, with blue glowing rings on each wrist, elbow, shoulder, knee, and ankle. It looked as if the 10 rings had been fused with some kind of living armor, using them as power sources. Revered Lion thought, Mark 8! Roar! Hulk bellowed, pushing aside the rubble and straining his hand toward Lion. Revered Lion caught Hulk's thumb, stopping his palm. The grip alone registered almost 1,300 tons. Is this a rage state? What did Tony do to you? He muttered. He flicked his wrist and threw Hulk back into the ground. Lion didn't stop. He lifted, swung, and slammed again and again. Hulk's roars grew louder, his rage feeding his strength. Revered Lion kept an eye on the numbers in his head. Single-arm strength's over 2,000 tons now. This Hulk's intelligence is low. His anger is raw. He'll just keep getting stronger unless he's broken. During the Avengers 3 period, after time on Saga, Hulk's intelligence had grown and his emotions had become complex. He even resisted fighting, but this Hulk had been reborn recently. His mind was closer to a beast's, simple, furious, hard to calm without overwhelming pain. Sorry, I hope this won't scar you, Revered Lion said quietly, then grabbed Hulk and pressed him down, starting to punch his right cheek in a rapid, controlled series. 1 punch, 2 punches, the strikes blurred with afterimages. Each blow was calibrated, about 10,000 tons, but the speed made them like falling missiles. 2 seconds later, Hulk's head had nearly been crushed. He lost consciousness. Lion released him and watched as the green form slumped and settled back into Bruce Banner. Banner's breathing slowed. His body shrank and softened. Revered Lion, you're back! Tony arrived, crossing the street in 2 leaps, but Lion had already taken care of Hulk. Tony looked stunned. Wait, what did you do? I wanted a proper spar. Revered Lion picked Banner up off the pavement. I was about to ask you what you did to make him so angry. He looked at the wreckage. And what exactly have you, the director, been protecting here? You know he's the Hulk? Tony glanced around and then tried to smooth things over. Don't worry, all the damage will be compensated by Stark Unlimited. Stop. It was announced in advance. Some people are actually hoping Hulk smashes more cars so they can get new ones. And it's Avengers director, not S.H.I.E.L.D. director, he added with a grin. But this block alone looks like $100 million in damage. Is the company really that rich? Of course. Your Superman merchandise and my Iron Man stuff sold out globally. The movie's a hit, revenues through the roof. Movie? Revered Lion blinked. What movie? And what happened in the last 10 days to make this? He paused, confused. Last night, when he'd scanned the world with his mind, Tony had still been working at the Avengers base. How had New York turned into a battlefield overnight? Chapter 140. Tony, let's start with the big guy from earlier, Tony said, thinking it over. That's a long story, and interrupting for a moment, Natasha cut in, walking up. It doesn't just concern Leon. It concerns you too, Mr. Stark, doesn't it? Is there more to it? Natasha, you tell him. Leon glanced at the Yelena sisters at his side. Then someone began the explanation about the Hulk. The story went back several months to when Leon destroyed the Eagle Nation base in Afghanistan. Whether it was his actions there or his disregard for military warnings when crossing the border, both had stirred some warmongers in the Eagle Nation military. One of them, Air Force Lieutenant General Ross, moved immediately. He ordered the military's super soldier research accelerated at all costs, hoping to create a counterweight to Superman. A month later, however, Leon showed what it meant to withstand a nuclear blast and be a one-man catastrophe, which temporarily killed the military's appetite. Still, Ross's super soldier program continued to inch forward. During their indiscriminate searches, they finally tracked down a long-escaped test subject, Dr. Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner was a genius physicist with multiple doctorates. In 2003, While involved in a military experiment, he had been exposed to massive gamma radiation, which transformed him into the Hulk. He'd lost control, and in the chaos injured his girlfriend and her father, General Ross. After he escaped the military facility, Banner occasionally regained lucidity, but was relentlessly hunted. Afraid that Ross would weaponize whatever monster lived inside him, Banner abandoned everything and fled to Brazil, spending 5 years in hiding. In 2006, after Stark Industries released a new line of digital devices, Banner used one of them to send one last message to his girlfriend, Betty Ross. Then he vanished again. Only a few days ago did the military finally pick up a lead. They contacted Stark Industries. Through data traces and big data sleuthing, they located Banner working in a small factory in Brazil. What followed was a sequence of pursuit, a rampage, an escape, and renewed pursuit. Taking advantage of Banner's lapse in caution, the military remotely administered a massive tranquilizer dose and captured him, bringing him back to New York. Betty Ross, who had been out of contact with Banner for years, discovered what her father was planning. Still in love with Banner, she stole General Ross's ID, snuck into the base, and helped free him. The reunited couple fled into the city and tried to flag a cab to get away. They were quickly surrounded by military forces. Among the interceptors was a soldier who'd been contaminated by Hulk blood during earlier attempts to subdue Banner, Emil Blonsky. Blonsky had once been a capable soldier, but exposure to Hulk blood transformed him into a towering brute with superhuman strength. The military called him the Abomination. True to his name, Abomination fought without discrimination and killed many soldiers. Cornered and desperate to protect Betty, Bruce transformed into the Hulk again. The two monsters tore through the streets of New York, fighting from one end of the block to the other. Cars were like disposable clubs to them. They smashed, threw, and moved on. Then the armored men arrived. Dozens of soldiers, clad in black battle armor, descended and took control of the scene. The whole street was a ruin. There were no untouched vehicles left. The well-trained operatives split into teams. Some began evacuating civilians, others moved on the two beasts. 4 armored operatives slid low and struck the monsters at their joints to knock them down. Then more than 20 advanced, using joint locks and restraints. Each of those operatives had a lifting capacity measured in tens of tons. Even one of them could hold his own against the pair, let alone 20. On one of Hulk's arms, 3 operatives locked on. The 2 monsters were forced to the ground and howled, but the operatives limited that too. Every time they opened their mouths, tranquilizers were rammed down their throats. Abomination was quickly incapacitated and lapsed into unconsciousness. Hulk, however, was resilient. Despite the heavy sedatives, he forced his eyes open and bellowed, "Hulk!" At that moment, Tony arrived in a new suit of armor. "Ooh-hoo! Look who crawled out of which lab. This green baby? Is this the Hulk?" "You did well, everyone. Leave the rest to me," Tony called. "Wait, Mr. Stark. He's already almost—" "Well, never mind," an agent began, trying to warn him. Tony ignored the caution, dropped onto the top of Hulk's massive head, and started punching his forehead. "Sleep, sleep, sleep," he sang, pounding away as if playing an arcade game. His punches were powerful, 100-ton hits, but they only woke the dazed Hulk and made him furious. A thunderous roar filled the street. Hulk surged, breaking free from the operatives' holds and tossing off the armored men clinging to him. He slammed his fists into the pavement, stood up, and fixed the black and gold Iron Man with bloodshot eyes. Oversized Shrek, did I interrupt your nap? Want to start over?" Tony said, feeling the pressure of those eyes. "My brother taught me a few lullabies. Which style do you prefer?" "Look, I can't exactly rock you like a baby." Hulk roared and lunged, and Tony quipped, "Whoa, honestly, you have a bit of bad breath," then fired a repulsor blast into his face. Hulk was pushed back, but hardly hurt. The blast only made his eyes go redder. With a single punch, he sent Iron Man flying. Tony smacked into an apartment building, blasting through the living room wall and turning the place into rubble. He dusted himself off, peered at the stunned family of 3 frozen at their dining table, and tried to recover his usual stick. Sorry, I forgot to knock. Is that Bassa fish? Nice lunch. I won't be staying to eat, though." "Though it looks like you probably weren't planning to continue either," he muttered, and began to walk awkwardly toward the hole he'd made. "Someone will come to compensate you later. You can pick out a new place. Also, whoa! A massive green hand reached through the gaping hole, grabbed Tony, and pulled him out of the apartment. Big guy, you should have let me finish talking. Now I'm a bit miffed. Hulk swung Tony around like a rag doll. Tony's thrusters flared and he fought the grip, finally breaking free from the giant hand.